It is that time of the year to get those official predictions in. Last week, Diesel and I gave you our official predictions for South Carolina and for Clemson. Today, I'm going to give you my official predictions 2024 Carolina Panthers. No, this is not going to be a depressing segment. No, we're not going to cover this segment with clouds and raindrops. We're going to try our best to be fair here, pump life into the Carolina Panthers fan base, because that's what we do right here on Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. Good to be with you on this Tuesday edition. Carolina Panthers season started last Thursday, August 8th, as they were on the road in the preseason. Game 1 of 3 at New England. As you know, Bryce Young did not play. The Panthers lost that one 17-3. 2 more preseason games remaining for Dave Canales and the Carolina Panthers before they get going on September the 8th at New Orleans. What are your predictions for the 2024 Carolina Panthers? You can play along as well. 71307 is the way you can text the show. Start your text with the word FAN. That's FAN. Phone lines will also be open towards the end of this segment. It's the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, 844-FAN phone. That's 844-326-3663. So many ways for you to get in touch with the program. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Let's get right into it. Opening at New Orleans. This is a pivotal game, in my opinion, for the Carolina Panthers at the Saints. I really want to believe in Dave Canales. I really want to believe in Bryce Young. I told you last week when Diesel and I were discussing Bryce Young, I told you then that I was still holding on to hope. I was still holding on to belief from what I saw from Bryce Young in Alabama. And again, I know that what we saw from Bryce Young on the field last year was not good. I'm very aware of that. However, Bryce Young was a dynamic quarterback at Alabama. And does he have the best team around him in Charlotte? No, he does not. Does he have the best offensive coordinator? Does he have the best head coach? We don't know. The jury's still out on Dave Canales and the hire. However, I do think they'll be improved. I think Canales is a good addition for Bryce Young. I think a full off season and a system that actually works is an improvement. I think it's going to be what Bryce Young needs. I say that, and then I tell you that they go on the road to open the season at New Orleans. I'm not the biggest believer in Derek Carr. I don't know that Derek Carr is the answer in New Orleans. However, I don't believe the Carolina Panthers go on the road to open the season and beat New Orleans. They're still a good football team. They still have a really good running back in Alvin Kamara. They still have a good defense. The Saints at times will find that gear and play above their means, if you will. Last year, they weren't good. I went to a Monday night game last year in Charlotte. It was the Saints at the Panthers, and that was probably the most boring football game I think I've ever seen with my eyes. So I'm not going to predict Carolina to go on the road at New Orleans and win. Do I think it'll be close? I do. I think the Panthers will play New Orleans close to open the season. I just don't have enough faith in Bryce Young yet to go and predict them to upset the Saints. What say you when it comes to that first game at New Orleans? Am I right? Am I wrong there by giving New Orleans a win over Carolina in week 1? Joey chimes in on the text line. Joey says, 30 years I've been a Panthers fan. I have no hope in Canales and Young this season, maybe next year. 5 wins this year, says Joey. No hope in Canales, no hope in Bryce Young, says Joey. Joey, I don't think it's fair to say you don't have hope in Canales quite yet. I do think you need to give him a few weeks. Give him 6 weeks, Joey. How about that? Can we agree on that? Can we agree to give the guy 6 to 8 weeks? You say, well, 6 to 8 weeks, that's a long time. Well, it's his first year, right? First year with Bryce Young. I think you do have to give him time. But 5 wins this year, Joey, even though you have no hope and no faith in this season, 5 wins, FYI, would be a 3-win increase from last season, only winning 2. JD also agrees. JD chimes in on the stream and says, yeah, I'm looking at 5 wins, and that would be lucky. The schedule's pretty difficult out the gate. It is. JB chimes in, says, Tolo. What's up, Tolo, JB? Brian, what's up to you as well? JD also says Tolo. Tolo stands for Turn It On, Leave It On. That's what you are, our audience. That's what we ask you to do every single day from 3 to 7 p.m. So I have the Carolina Panthers starting off with a big fat L. They come back home the next week. They host the Chargers. Are the Chargers where they need to be with Harbaugh in week 2? I don't think so. However, they're not beating the Chargers. I don't care if it's at home, in LA, or in the parking lot at Walmart. The Panthers aren't beating the LA Chargers in week 2. It's not happening. So the bad thing is, while we do expect some improvement, they start off 0-2. The Panthers do. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about that. Week 3, September 22nd. They go to Las Vegas. The Panthers are at the Raiders on the 22nd of September, 4:05 CBS game. This is where it gets interesting for me. The Raiders have uncertainty at the quarterback position. I do not think the Raiders are going to be a good football team this year. I really don't. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Anthony Brown, Carter Bradley, and Peterman. Those are the quarterbacks. Nathan Peterman. Of those quarterbacks that I just named, how many of those do you know? You know Gardner Minshew. He's not a quality starter, right? Aiden O'Connell, the jury's still out on him. He might be a good NFL starter, but guess what? Guess what? I am giving the Carolina Panthers their first win on the road in week 3 at Las Vegas. You say they're going on the road. Do you expect them to win on the road? Yeah, I do. I really do. I think they go out to Vegas and get their first win, and I think that's a good win. I think that's I don't want to say a great win, but I think it's a good win to be able to go on the road and beat Vegas. I'll also say this about Vegas. It's a must win. You know why I say it's a must win? The next few weeks, it's not easy. Joe Burrow, September 29th, Bank of America versus the Bengals. They ain't beating the Bengals, right? The Panthers aren't beating Joe Burrow at 1 o'clock on Fox on the 29th of September. That ain't happening. So, according to my official predictions, I have the Panthers starting 1-3. Losses to the Saints, Chargers, a win over the Raiders, and a loss to the Bengals at home. JB says 4 to 5 wins for the Charlotte Panthers on the YouTube stream. The Charlotte Panthers, man, he's not even giving them their original name of Carolina anymore. That's tough, JB. Joey chimes in on the text line, 71307. Joey says, yes, 3 wins more. That's how little I view Reich and Rule's tenures. Talking about Frank Reich and Matt Rule. Canales is a much better coach, but he's playing with a terrible roster, says Joey. I don't disagree. I think the roster, excuse me, I think the roster is improved, Joey. Is it a terrible roster? I wouldn't say it's a terrible roster, but it's not the best. I'll agree with you there. So the last game I picked is the Bengals. At Chicago, October 6th. ladies and gentlemen, is there a more intriguing game for the Carolina Panthers within the first 5 to 6 games than at Chicago? You may say, well, Cole, why would Chicago be intriguing by any stretch? Well, normally you would look at that and say, you know what? The Carolina Panthers should win that game at Chicago, right? At Soldier Field. They should win that game. However, with Caleb Williams, that's not a guaranteed win. And in fact, I have the Carolina Panthers going to Soldier Field and losing the game. They're going to lose to the Bears. And you may say, well, that's a bad loss. It may be a bad loss early in the season, but guess what? I think the Chicago Bears are going to surprise some people this year. I really do. I think the Bears are going to surprise some people, and I don't think they'll be as bad as everybody thinks. Texter from the 907 says they're not beating the Raiders. Well, Texter, I think they can. I think they do. I don't see any other wins in those first 6 games. Do you, Texter? Talking about the Carolina Panthers. So Atlanta, October 13th. That's the next game after the loss to Chicago. This one's at Bank of America versus the Falcons. I'm going loss there. Doesn't matter if Kirk Cousins is playing or Michael Penix Jr. The Panthers will lose, and that will only be one win so far on the road at the Raiders. Right now, that'll be 1-5 throughout the first 6. They go on the road to Washington. This one's interesting. Washington hasn't been good. However, Washington has, for the past few years of indecency, they have had a good defense. They've had a good defense. Now they got Dan Quinn. Now they've got Jaden Daniels. I think that Washington's going to be much improved, but it's not going to be overnight. I think there's still question marks at skill position for Washington. I have the Carolina Panthers going on the road at Washington, and all of a sudden you can start calling them road warriors because I have them beating Washington. There's your second win of the season for Bryce Young on the road. The Panthers fans in Charlotte are like, hey, are y'all ever going to win at home? Or are you just only going to win on the road? Well, I have them winning twice on the road. None at home as of yet. At Washington, I'll give them a win. Excuse me. October 27th, the following Sunday, 4:25, at the Mile High Denver Broncos. This one to me is very, very tough to pick. I don't think Denver's a great team. I do think Denver, though, is improved. I like Sean Payton. I don't think Denver was the best fit for Sean Payton. I think you saw some really good quarterback play over the weekend. I know it was preseason. I think their rookie quarterback, Nix, is going to be okay. I have the Panthers losing at Denver. I'm sorry, but I have them losing at Denver. We're going to get to a bye in just a couple of weeks, and we'll catch our breath and recap. But the next week, November 3rd, at home versus the Saints. They've already played the Saints once. They went on the road and lost. I have them beating the Saints the second time around. Derek Carr has a bad game. Carolina's defense steps up. I have them beating the Saints. How about that? There's 3 wins. Cole's found 3 wins in the schedule. Then they go to Munich, Germany the next week, November 10th, and play the Giants. I hate to say this, but Daniel Jones beats you. Daniel Jones beats you. That is where we find the bye week. Let's catch our breath, do a little recap, get your thoughts in. The text line's blowing up, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. As of right now, at the bye week, I have the Panthers losing to the Saints, 0-1. Losing to the Chargers, 0-2. At the Raiders, 1-2. The Bengals at home, 1-3. Chicago 1-4. Falcons 1-5. Washington 2-5. Denver 2-6. New Orleans at home 3-6. Giants 3-7. 3-7 at the bye for the Carolina Panthers. What say you? Is that terrible? Will you agree with me on that 3-7? Or is that too many wins? 3 wins at the bye, too many wins. Let's go to the phones. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. Ben, doing a good job producing today. Ben, who do we have? Oh, he hung up. Yeah. Well, caller, you can call back. Ben says you hung up. I was getting to you momentarily. You're more than welcome to call back. 844-FAN phone if you want to chime back in on the conversation. So at the bye, let me catch up on the text line as well as on the stream. Let's see. JD says, they're already touting Caleb Williams as the next Mahomes with some of his practice tape. Okay. Let's go down a little farther in the comments section. JB says Sean Payton should either be the Cowboys or Giants head coach. He doesn't fit with Denver. JB, I agree. I like Sean Payton a lot. I don't think the fit there in Denver's his best fit. I was surprised he went there, to be quite honest with you. Joey on the text line says it's improved from putrid. Joey, you can't say that. From putrid to terrible, says Joey. So a little bit of improvement. Let's see. Texter 907. Texter says they won't get their first win until Washington, and then they beat Denver. Okay? So that would be 2 in a row, right, Texter? I don't hate that. And you might be right. I might be wrong. Maybe they don't go on the road and beat the Raiders, but I think they do. I think the Raiders are a team that the Carolina Panthers are capable of beating. I really do. I think they're capable of beating the Raiders. Let's see. Corn Chip chimes in on the conversation. 71307 says, not a single win, mass chaos. Man, that's tough. Joey says, my hopeful prediction, keyword hopeful, prediction is 7-10. Texter 907 says 3 wins at the bye, Washington, Denver, New York, Giants. I also have 3 wins at the bye, 3-7. All right, let's get to the rest, and then we're going to run to a break. And I have a very interesting conversation coming up after the break that I want you to stay tuned for. But after the bye, man, this is where it gets tough, right? You host Kansas City. No need to really draw that one out, right? Big, fat L. Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield versus the old coach and Dave Canales. This one, to me, is a little bit more of a difficult game to pick. Tampa Bay in Charlotte. I say win. That's right, 4 wins. They've doubled their wins from last year. I give the Carolina Panthers a win over the Bucs. Then they go the next week at the Link, at Philly. That's a big fat L, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about that one. The next week they come home and host my Dallas Cowboys. Of course, I'm going to give them an L there. The Cowboys will beat the Panthers. However, I'm not very high on Dallas this year, believe it or not. It'll be closer than people think. So I'll give them a loss to the Cowboys. That's 2 in a row. Next week, this is a big game, in my opinion, for Bryce Young to gain some confidence after 2 straight losses. At Bank of America, December 22nd versus Arizona. I'm going win. The Cardinals aren't the team to go on the road and get it done. I know it's the Panthers, but I just don't believe in Kyler Murray. I don't believe in Kyler Murray. I really don't. I think Kyler Murray struggles. I'm going to give him a win at Arizona. That would give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins for the Panthers. Can you believe that? 2 games remain. At Tampa Bay, I think they split with the Bucs. I'll go loss there. And then at Atlanta, I think they get swept by the Falcons, a 2-game sweep, if you will. A loss there. So that completes it. How many wins do I have for the Panthers? 3 before the bye, 2 after. That equals 5. Before the bye, 7 losses. Is that right? Losses to the Saints, Chargers, Bengals, Bears, Falcons. That's 5. Broncos and Giants. That's 7. 12 losses total. After the bye, a loss to Kansas City, Philly, Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Atlanta. 5-12. 5-12 in 2024 for the Carolina Panthers is my official prediction. 11, 12 losses, 5 wins. Wins over the Raiders, Commanders, Buccaneers, Cardinals, and Commanders. What do you think? Is that too many wins? Too many wins there, you think? 5 wins? That goes from 2 wins last year to 5 this year. Texter from the 419 says, all caps, wow. After the bye, I'm giving the Panthers 2 wins. 1 against a team with their franchise quarterback out for the season, and 1 in the final week if they face a team sitting their starters for the playoffs, 5-12. So, Texter, we agree on that? We agree. Joey says, so my exact prediction. Stop copying my notes for show prep. How'd you know, Joey? How'd you know I found your notes and copied them? 5-12. What is 5-12? What does that mean for Bryce Young? What does that mean for Dave Canales? Brian on the YouTube stream says, I think the Panthers will be 3-15. JB says, I say 2-8 through 10 games with wins over the Saints and Broncos. Last 7, they'll beat the Bucs 1 time, Arizona, and finish 4-13. Wow. Not seeing a lot of predictions on the stream or the text line that are over 5 games. Brandon Burnett says 4 wins tops on the text line. Doug chimes in on the text line. I agree with your 5-12 prediction. What does that mean, though, for Bryce Young? What does that mean for Dave Canales? It's an improvement. You improved by 3 games. Is the pressure off in a sense? I don't think so. Does that prove that Bryce Young's your guy? I don't think so. That's what's scary. And we could spend another segment on this. But if you go 5-12, do you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that Bryce Young's your guy? That's what scares me. That's what will leave doubt and fear in Panthers fans' hearts. They won't know after year 2 if they have their guy. That's the reality of it. That's the reality. All right, Adam Schefter, in the very next segment, had some thoughts on the Guardian Cap helmets. Diesel and I touched on this briefly last week. I have some interesting stats regarding concussion rates. I found this audio from Adam Schefter of ESPN very fascinating. And he'll tell you when he thinks you will see players in the NFL start to wear the Guardian Cap helmets. I talked to a couple of high school coaches today about this as well. I'll give you their thoughts. And are you, as a fan, okay with them wearing these helmets in the game? All that and more coming up on the other side. This is the Fan Upstate.
71307. This is Wire to Wire with Cole Bryson and Diesel on the Fan.
It is wire to wire. Concussions remain an issue across all levels of football. Did you hear what Adam Schefter had to say about this? Well, if you didn't, I'll paraphrase for you. Adam Schefter said that he believes you will see in the NFL within the next 3 to 5 years, he believes you will see NFL players with the Guardian cap helmets on. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, they're the soft look caps that go over the top of the helmets, right? You've probably seen them in 7-on-7s or scrimmages, NFL practices. Do you, as a fan, have issue with, let's say in 5 years, 6 years from now, do you have issue with Guardian cap helmets being worn across all levels of football, even during the games? It's fascinating. It really is. The NFL has seen concussion rates continue to rise. I also talked to a high school coach about this today. Let me say this to begin. There's no cure. There's no way to prevent concussions as a whole, right? There's nothing out there other than not playing football that prevents concussions. So in the NFL, the total number of concussions suffered in preseason and regular season practices and games was 219 in 2023. They saw a 213 concussion spike from 2022 to 2023. Concussion numbers are lower than they were a few years ago, but that progress has stagnated in a way. The NFL conducted about 1.6 concussion evaluations per game in 2023, okay? So 1.6, just over one a game. A positive concussion diagnosis emerged every 3 to 4 evaluations. According to the NFL, only 1% of their documented concussions showed up on a delayed basis after being missed by a game day evaluation. 43% of the concussions in the NFL were self-reported by the players. Jeff Miller, the NFL's executive VP, he said, I think it's fair to say there were an increasingly conservative nature last year in which we examine and diagnose players. Is that a good thing? I don't know that I would have came out and said that, but that's what he said. I think it's fascinating that we've come to the place now where we might see the Guardian helmets, the Guardian caps, if you will, worn during the game. If you're a fan and have issue with it, the only reason I can think you'd have issue is you're messing up the traditional look of the helmets, right? You're messing up the viewer standpoint of being able to see those pretty logos on the helmets. Well, college football, guess what? Still concussions happening. Examining 538 Pac-12 conference games from 2016 to 2019, researchers found that there were 213 concussions during the study period, including 15 that occurred on plays in which targeting was called. A total of 141 targeting penalties were called, meaning a concussion was diagnosed every 9 targeting calls. So for a 4-year stretch, think about that. In one conference, we're talking about one conference, the Pac-12. Not college football, not the SEC, not the ACC, Pac-12, one singular conference. A concussion was diagnosed 1 out of every 9 targeting calls. That's a lot to me. That's a lot. A high school coach chimed in on the conversation today. I talked to a good friend of mine who I will not say his name, but he coaches high school football. He was an AD as well as a football coach here in the upstate for a very long time. This is what a friend of mine who's a coach said about these caps at the high school level. They're a really good investment. especially for the guys in the box and running backs who take more hits in a practice than other positions. I believe in them. They limit the impact of the collisions each day, therefore limiting the chances of concussions. Schools also need to invest in multiple full-time trainers who can cover the amounts of sports a 5A school has, and trainers who can do baseline concussion protocols prior to full contact. I think if the NFL does it, then college, then high school will. It will eventually trickle down as it usually does. We wear them now from varsity all the way down to C team, which is 9th grade. I asked the question to this coach, whose decision is it to wear them during the games? He said, the only problem with wearing them in the games on the collegiate level is the amount of money invested in alternative helmets like Oregon has. Money drives decisions. Boy, is that true. Helmet companies make a killing with alternative helmets for college teams. That comes from a high school coach here in the upstate. What say you? 71307. I think it's fascinating. I'm for it, okay? I'm absolutely for it. I know the alternate helmets and the traditions of college football. We want to see those logos and the colors, right? But I'm for it, man. I'm for player safety. Joey says on the text line, several texts to get to here. Joey says, I think the Guardian caps are a great idea. Wouldn't really change the style of play and provide additional protection. Amazon guy chimes in. The Guardian caps won't change the way the game is played, so if it lowers the rate of concussions, why not? Well, Amazon guy, I think that's a very good way of thinking. However, you know how people are in this world. Someone will be opposed to it, right? Texter from the, 344. Hopefully the numbers aren't that bad. Hopefully it's that they are just checking for more and by proxy finding more because of checking more. Well, that's probably true, but if you find more because you check more, you need to keep checking more, right? The answer is not just to quit checking, because if they're out there, you think that somebody needs to know about them. Texter from the 327 says players are to blame. Launching and leading with the helmet and then blaming it on that's how you make a roster is lame. Wow. Texter says the players are to blame. This one comes from the 432. If in 5 years this is the best safety option we have, then sure. But it's mind-blowing to me that those helmets are the best we could come up with. What do you mean by that? Because I'm curious by that, Texter, because the inside of the helmets are already padded. And new helmets are coming out every single year that have better padding inside the helmets to protect players in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. Ask players that played 20 years ago versus players that play today about the padding. If you have a kid that plays high school or college ball, you'll know, right? Especially if you played. The padding on the inside is a lot better than it's ever been. And there are high-dollar helmets that have some really fascinating padding on the inside that's supposed to protect. So, Texers, if you're saying if that's the best option we have, it's mind-blowing that those helmets are the best we could come up with. What else can you do besides not play the game? Because you have to do something, right? There's padding on the inside. Now we're adding padding to the outside. Other than not playing football, I'm not really sure what the answer there is. Texter from the 978 says, my son plays high school football. While the school provides helmets, I personally bought him a $400 Speed Flex helmet to help with safety. Now, Texter from the 978, I appreciate you texting in. I don't know the Speed Flex. I'm not exactly sure what's different about the Speed Flex and the other ones. I'm not educated on that. But I would assume that it's something to do with the inside padding. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But I was at the high school coaches clinic just a few weeks ago here in Greenville. And I did see some helmet providers, if you will, people who make helmets and pads and all kind of things like that. They had some helmets on showcase. And the guy, I was actually talking to a guy about it, and he was explaining to me, it may have been SpeedFlex. I'm not sure. However, he was explaining to me that the padding on the inside has dramatically increased for the better over the years. So I would think that's a good step, right? Again, I will say I don't think there's an answer to prevent them 100% talking about concussions. But if the caps on the outside, to the texter's point, I agree with you, texter. If the caps on the outside help, why not? Do you care more about seeing your team's logo than you do about the player's safety that's on the field? Because that'd be tough to come out and admit, right? Texter from the 423 says, oh, I believe this is Mike. If the NFL wants to mitigate concussions, go back to sweaters and leather hats. Right now, they practically have an exoskeleton. Let me click on the text so I can see the rest of it. And they throw caution to the wind. Self-preservation will kick in if they have limited protection. Texter from the 432 says, if you put the R&D in for 5 years, I'd be shocked that the Guardian helmet would still be the best option, one could hope. But if it's the safest, then that's fine by me. And I'm with you, Texter. To your point, if there's something out there better 5 years from now, then by all means, right? Then by all means, we should be using the best option. Now, money has a lot to do with this, especially when we talk about at the high school level. Can high schools from 1A all the way up to 5A afford to put every single one of their players in a Guardian cap? That's something that we need to talk about, because if we want to see it at the high school level, are the schools going to put up the financial investment to make it happen? I'll tell you this, there are schools across the state who have to make their financial means stretch year to year. I don't know if smaller schools that don't have the budgets of the 4A and 5A schools could afford that. Maybe they could. Maybe that's something that the state should pay for. I'm not sure. But I can tell you this, it'd be a cost. And then what if the player loses it? What if something happens to that one? Can they get damaged, right? I don't know. But again, I agree with the majority here that if there's a better option 5 years from now, then by all means, let's choose the better option. But if there's not, and the Guardian caps will help, and we'll see concussion rates go down, I don't care if we're talking about high school football, college, or pro, then let's do it. We don't care more about seeing logos than we do the safety of the players, do we? I mean, they're colored caps. You can still have an orange cap on. I don't really think it matters that much to the common or casual fan if they have that logo on their helmet, if they can see it from the upper deck or not. Boys football has the most concussion rates of any other sport. Everybody knows that. Football is the high school sport that has the most concussions. Per 10,000 athletic exposures, high school football players will have an average of 11.2 concussions. This is a higher rate than both college and professional players. So basically what we're saying is the science has shown that we see more concussions at the high school level than we do college and pro. And that's a lot, because I just read you the numbers for college and pro from one conference talking about the Pac-12. 213 concussions in a 4-year period. 1 out of every 9 targeting calls were a diagnosed concussion. That's definitely a concern. To me, it is, but it's fascinating. I don't know. I don't know that we'll see them anytime soon. I have seen high school players, like in scrimmages and practices and stuff that I go to and cover. I have seen them frequently. I haven't seen them a lot. Like, I'll give you an example. Over the past 4 or 5 days, I've been to 2 different jamborees at the high school level, including last night. I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different teams. 8 different teams. Of the 8 teams I've seen in the past 4 days at the high school level, I have not seen any Guardian caps on helmets. So again, a lot of it probably has to do with money. Who's paying for it, the player, the parent, or the school? I think that's important as well. And if the players value, if the coaches that are coaching them value safety, they should, right? They should, but I don't know if they will. That's the sad part of it. All right, a fascinating, hilarious, sad, all of the above story. If you were president, if I were president, could you pardon this Chicago woman? Well, by God, I would. What do you think? And again, I apologize. It's going to be hard for me not to laugh. But what do you think I'm talking about? A Chicago woman, 9 years in prison for stealing $1.5 million of what? I'll tell you next.
Sports takes at the door. Call in if you're man enough.
844 Fan Phone. This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
Texter says, I went to a high school jamboree last Friday. Only one player on all four teams there had on the Guardian helmet cover. Wow, that's surprising. Texter from the 201 chimes in, also to help with concussions. What do you see on every level of football? Players want to look cool and not put mouthpieces in. Mouthpieces, says the texter, also help with avoiding concussions. I have heard that. All right, the craziest story I've heard all week. Try to find me a crazier story than this. I'll never laugh about someone going to jail, but this is wild. With a capital W. A Chicago woman over the weekend pled guilty to stealing more than $1.5 million of what? From where? Okay, this woman stole $1.5 million of chicken wings from a school district. This lady, who's 68, was sentenced to 9 years in prison during a hearing on Friday. At the time of the crime, this lady, I'm not going to give her name, I don't want to keep it somewhat respectful, was working as the director of food services for Harvey School District 152. Between July 20 and February 22, prosecutors say Liddell, oh crap, I just said her name. I told you I wasn't going to do that, but oh well, I messed up. Placed hundreds of unauthorized orders for food items, including 11,000 cases of chicken wings through the school district's main supplier. The orders were placed separately from the district's legitimate orders. I guess you can't do that. The fraud began at the height of COVID. And this lady, she's the goat of stealing chicken wings. I don't think I've ever heard of this amount of money, this large amount of money being stolen in terms of through food. The food, prosecutors say, was never brought to the school or provided to the students. A routine mid-year audit conducted by the district's business manager in January of 22 showed the food service department had exceeded its annual budget by over $300K. Despite only being halfway through the school year. So, ma'am, why are y'all over the budget $300K and we're only at Christmas? Upon closer review, she discovered individual invoices signed by Liddell for massive quantities of chicken wings, an item that was never served to students because they contain bones. So, the question is, what food, if I told you that you're going to have to steal $1.5 million of food, or if you don't want to be a thief for the day, if I could gift you $1.5 million worth of food, what food would it be? If you're Jameis Winston, it might be crab legs, right? If you're this lady in Chicago, it might be chicken wings. For me, I'd be okay with the chicken wings or the crab legs. Madcraft on the YouTube stream, that says that's like 428,000 pounds of chicken wings. JD says, hits the $1.5 million price tag. JB says, that's frying up a lot of chicken wings. That's quite a tab, to your point, JD. You are exactly right. That is quite the tab. He says steak and crab legs for this guy. I didn't give you two, only one. You have to choose, JD. I said one food. $1.5 million worth. You can steal it or somebody else can steal it and gift it to you. It can be hot, literally. You don't get two, you get one. I go crab legs. Lifetime supply of crab legs. I'm all in. T Swizzle says he would say some good old brisket. I love brisket, but I think I'd get tired of it, man. I think I'd get tired of it. Amazon guy on the text line says, I think she got it right. Gotta go wings. You think so, Amazon guy? She hit the nail on the head there. Chicken wings, $1.5 million worth. That's a lot of chicken wings, man. That's a lot of chicken wings. All right, coming up next, Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of Furman Football of the Paladins. They were ranked number 6th in the FCS Top 25 yesterday. We'll ask Dan what he expects from Furman in 2024. Can you believe we're just under 20 days now from college football? I mean, are you kidding me? The most anticipated college football season ever. We're going to bring it local. Furman Paladins football. Joining us now, the play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins that you hear right here on the Fan Upstate, Dan Scott. Dan, before we get into the Ole Miss game, which is a huge opponent, the Furman Fan Fest we've been promoting this Saturday, is there going to be a dunk booth where fans can dunk a Dan is what I want to know. Dan, you got me? Oh, we lost Dan. We'll try him back. Dan must have hit the end button. He hung up on us. But I'm going to give my producer, Ben. Actually, I'll text Dan and give him the number. I'm sure he knows it already. Is he calling in now? By the way, give a shout out, Tolos, to our new producer on the board, Ben. Ben's doing a great job. Ben's going to effort Dan Scott back on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone. Ben's got music playing now. There he is, Dan Scott. By the way, while we get Dan Scott back on the line, I don't know if you knew this or not. Furman opens with Ole Miss. Quite the opponent to open up with, right? Pretty good, tough test to start the season. Let's see how good we are this year. Let's open up with Ole Miss. That's tough. August 31st, 7 o'clock in Oxford, Mississippi. Dan, do we have you now? Dan, can you hear me now? Maybe, maybe not. Let's try this. Hold on one second. Hey, Dan, what about now?
Now I can hear you.
Well, that was probably my mistake. Listen, I'll take the blame. I'm training Ben. Ben's a new producer here with us, and I'll take the blame on that one. Glad to have you, man.
It's good to be with you, Cole. How you doing, buddy?
I was good. Look, before we get into the Ole Miss game, we can talk about the Furman Fan Fest. I was joking with you when we lost you the first time. I would love to be able to come to the Furman Fan Fest and see you guys Saturday. I don't know if I'll be able to make it out or not. I'm planning to, but is there going to be a dunk booth where we can dunk a Dan, or has that been discussed yet?
You know what? This one's going to be a little more low-key business-like. They're going to have a few things in the end zone. It's not going to be as maybe over the top as it's been the last couple of years. However, I will say this. For the right price, I can come up with some pie pans and whipped cream.
There we go.
That you know, for a certain charity or something along those lines, maybe we could make something happen.
I like that.
Kind of on the sly outside of the official flag of Furman University.
Right on the side. We won't tell anybody. Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, joining us on Wire to Wire. Dan, this college football season, from the national perspective, is the most anticipated ever because of the expanded playoff. Do you feel that at the FCS level? How excited are you to kick this thing off?
Well, I'm just, we're glad everybody else is getting to the party that the FCS has been at for a long time.
That's right.
Because it's as close as you're going to get to truly crowning a champion on the field. And they're going to find out in a 12-team playoff what the FCS finds out in a 24-team playoff. The 13th and the 25th teams think that they should have been in, and there will be discussions about regional bias and conference bias and all of that stuff. But you're going to get an opportunity to kind of settle it on the field to a certain degree. And I'm happy to see it happen. I really am, because I think for all the kicking and screaming that the people who run big time college football have done over the past, 2 or 3 decades and trying to keep this from happening, they're going to find out it's the best move they could have made.
That's a fascinating point. I'm glad you brought that up, because to your point, y'all have been doing it on the FCS level now for quite some time. So I think that's fascinating. I'm very interested in that. But on a serious note, Furman Fan Fest this Saturday, before we get into the schedule, it's a free event. There will be an autograph session for people to come out and get autographs from the team, and then a scrimmage, I believe, at 1 p.m. Is that right?
Actually, they've moved it back an hour, and we have a new promo that should be airing on your station now.
Good.
They're going to open the gates at 11, and everything's going to start at noon.
Gotcha.
So just so for our fans who maybe haven't gotten that word yet, they've been putting it out on social media and everything else, but it's going to start at noon. Yeah, but there will be some stuff in the end zone for the fans and kids, and there'll be an autograph session afterwards. And, how much of an actual scrimmage it'll end up being, I don't know, but it will be a practice. They'll be able to watch the team go through drills, and they will do some 11-on-11 stuff. Clay told me yesterday that he's about at the point now where they're going to dial back the actual tackling that they've been doing. He said they've tackled more in the spring and in the first 2 weeks of camp this fall than they had probably done in the last 3 or 4 years preseason combined. And he's at the point now where they're going to start dialing that back a little bit to make sure that their frontline guys are healthy. Still some position battles going on. So, how much head thumping you're going to see Saturday, I don't know, but you're going to get a chance to see them go through some drills and see some athletes in action, and it'll be a fun day.
Dan, you've been calling Furman for quite some time now. Can you remember as big of an opening matchup for the Paladins as August 31st, Saturday night in Oxford against Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin, and the Rebels?
Well, as far as openers go, I'm trying to think. We've opened at Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
We opened at South Carolina last year. We've opened at Michigan State since I've been here. We have played games at Florida, at LSU, at North Carolina State. So, who judges?
Right.
Is opening at Ole Miss any bigger than opening at Clemson or South Carolina? Maybe, because it's a road trip in a place they've never been before. They've played Clemson multiple times. They've played South Carolina multiple times. So maybe from an anticipation standpoint, the biggest thing is, as we know at this level, is schools Furman size need this game for their bottom line. And while and Clay said this to me yesterday, and it's really true, while it's the most important game on the schedule because it's next, it's really the least important game on the entire schedule from a Furman standpoint. But hey, look, it's going to be fun. We get the chance to go into those atmospheres, and a lot of folks that I'm associated with, this is the only time they've ever gotten to do it. I was blessed to cover Clemson as a writer and a broadcaster for 12 years. So I got to see Death Valley and at its peak. And, if you're not careful, it can almost become routine. And
Sure.
That's why now entering my 14th year at Furman, these games that we get every year are pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to, hey, if nothing else, we get to spend some time on the Grove.
That's right.
That's all I hear from people. The Grove. You got to check out the Grove. People with tents that have chandeliers hanging from them for their tailgating.
Wow.
So, let's go check it out.
What a combination. Tents with chandeliers.
Yeah.
Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, joining us right here on Wire to Wire. They open the season in 17 days, 14 hours, 50 minutes, and 16 seconds and counting, thanks to the Furman website for that. Dan, would you describe Clay Hendricks and his tenure at Furman in any other way than stability? That's one word that comes to mind. Consistency is another one. But how would you describe his tenure at Furman?
I would. Stability would be a good word. I think another good word would be, or a phrase, maybe, striving for excellence. This program has a proud tradition that Clay was a part of. He has spent between being a player and a coach at Furman, both as an assistant and now as a head coach. This is his 39th year at Furman.
Wow.
And he was 10 years gone to the Air Force Academy as an assistant coach. So he knows Furman tradition. And, I have to be real honest with you, as the college football landscape has changed over the years, even at the FCS level, I had my doubts as to whether a small private school like Furman that actually believes in academics, unlike a lot of the other schools that will play in and out of our conference, I had my doubts as to whether a school like Furman could really compete for an FCS national championship. Those doubts were erased 2 years ago when we made the playoff run to the second round, the first of the back-to-back 10-win seasons 2 years ago and last year, and then just solidified last year by going into overtime out at Montana in quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
This program is capable of doing it, and Clay Hendricks is the reason why. He has come back in and he has laid a groundwork. He's laid a foundation. He has provided stability, and he has the knack, he and his staff, for developing players. And while everybody around us, even in the Southern Conference, are raiding the transfer portal and doing what they can to build a team for a specific season, Clay still believes in building a program that is going to have sustained success by developing players. And, the COVID years, it skewed the roster, and that's why we had so many players with so much experience the past 2 years. I mean, we walked 41 seniors last year. This year, I think the number of freshmen and redshirt freshmen on the roster is something like 60. So, but those redshirt freshmen got an awful lot of experience, scout team and whatever, a year ago. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic this year, but stability, I think, is the best thing. And then the other word that you have to throw in there with him is integrity, because he always does everything the right way.
Dan, you had Tyler Huff at quarterback last season, a preseason second-team all-conference, a really good quarterback for the Paladins. What does the quarterback position look like in 2024?
Well, if you look at it just on the surface, you would say that the mantle is passed to Carson Jones, and it very well could be, because he's in his third year in the program. He's a redshirt sophomore. He started multiple games last year when Tyler was out, and comes out of that football factory in Tennessee that our former offensive coordinator George Quarles coached to so many championships for all those years. But I'm going to tell you, there's a freshman on campus right now named Trey Hedden, who is pushing that position as hard as he can. And Trey had the advantage of being able to enroll early, so he was here for spring practice. So he is a full semester ahead, not only in the classroom, but in the football classroom, if you will, of all of the other true freshmen. And I've been out to practice and watched. This is a pretty good battle that is shaping up between these guys. And then there's even a third guy, and Newell Garcia, the redshirt freshman from La Miranda, California, who right now, the first 2 weeks has been those three. I think this week you're going to see it pared down to two, that they'll be getting most of the reps to get ready for the game. I believe it's going to be Jones and Hedden that will be the two that'll be battling it out. If you ask me right now who's going to be the starter, I would say Carson Jones. Clay hasn't told me that, but I'll be surprised if in the 4 non-conference games we have at the beginning of the season, if we don't see both of those guys play and see who steps up and has the best success leading the team heading into the conference season.
Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, on the line with us, talking a little local Furman football, just 17 days away now from kicking things off in Oxford. The FCS AFCA coaches poll, Dan, has Furman starting the season at number 9, 10-3 a year ago. What does this national ranking in your mind mean, if anything?
It goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago. It means that Furman has reestablished its respect on the national level under Clay Hendricks. They're number 12th in the Stats Perform poll, the other major poll in the preseason, the media poll. And when Clay got here, he said that he wanted to get Furman back to being a perennial top 10 team. So getting that kind of respect, even after losing 40 players off of last year's roster, tells you what people think about the job that Clay's doing. And you know, on one hand, the polls, they're not overly important from one standpoint, because for Furman, you know, you win the conference, you're going to get the automatic bid. The polls help you though, and you see this even at the big boy level. The higher you start, the more room you have in case you have a stumble. In other words, if you start at 4, 5, or 9 and you have a stumble early in the season, you're not going to tumble out of sight. But if you're starting at 18 or 20 and you have that early season stumble, you're going to rocket out of the poll, and it's going to be hard for you to climb your way back in. So, you know, there is a little bit of that goes into play as well. But I think the big thing is it's just a confirmation that around the country, coaches and media alike have recognized the job that Clay has done, and they're showing it in the polls.
Dan,
now, all that doesn't mean anything until you go out and play, you know?
Sure.
You got to go earn it.
Dan, what would you say Furman fans who plan on watching Furman football in 2024, what would you say in your mind will excite them most once the games do start, especially the home games?
Offensively, there are going to be a ton of playmakers. The running back group is deep and it's healthy, which it was not at the end of last year. I think the wide receiver group is going to be collectively maybe the best that we've had since I've been here as a unit. There are playmakers all over the field, and defensively, even with the graduates, there's still a ton of talent, proven talent in the front seven. And there's a lot of young, unproven talent at the back end. So from an excitement standpoint, I think you're going to see a lot of playmakers on offense, and I think you're going to see some young guys on the defensive back end have to grow up in a hurry, but I think they're going to be enabled to do that because that front seven is going to be so productive again.
Dan, last question for you before we let you run. The SoCon, we know it's a tough conference, not just in football, but all sports. Do you feel like Furman's the clear-cut favorite in 2024? If not, who would you say could be knocking on the door?
You know, this conference has been so much better over the past 4 or 5 years, from the 1 to 5, 1 to 6 spots. Is there a clear-cut favorite? No, I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite. I think everybody agrees that the two favorites that may stand a notch above everybody else right now are Furman and Chattanooga. But Sanford is always going to be good. He's going to go into the transfer portal and bring players in. Kerwin Bell in Western Carolina is always going out and bringing in new players since he's been there, and they have been offensively as good as anybody in the league. So they're going to be dangerous. I think it's going to be another really fun league season. And you've got some new coaches, most notably Trey Lamb, Bobby Lamb's son, taking over at Mercer. And what's that going to look like now? So, but I think the two, at least according to the polls, the two clear-cut favorites, at least at season's beginning, appear to be Furman and Chattanooga.
Dan, great stuff as always. Have fun not only Saturday at the Fan Fest, but this season, 2024 Furman football right here on the Fan Upstate. We appreciate you, Dan.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks,
absolutely. That's Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins. And as I said, Furman football, man, 17 days away from rolling up to Oxford, Mississippi. What an opening matchup that is. And to Dan's point, they've played Clemson in the past. They've played South Carolina several times. But I don't know. Going up to Oxford to open the season at a night game, 7 o'clock, that one might be different. That one might be a little bit more electric. Not to say Williams-Brice and Clemson's Death Valley is not electric, but man, oh man, that's going to be a lot of fun for those guys. And they have Charleston Southern and Stetson, William, and Mary before they open SoCon play with Samford. So a lot of fun. Again, Furman Fan Fest this Saturday, 12 noon, the gates open. And the best part, it's a free event. How about that? Nothing beats free. All right, very next segment, the 2023 NFL playoff teams. I rank them from best to worst, in my opinion, in 2024. as the best team returning in 2024. I might get some pushback here. And if I do, it's okay. I like pushback. I like it. But guess what? I'm here to tell you, of the 2023 NFL playoff teams, no, I don't rank Kansas City 1. You may say, Cole, how can you not rank Kansas City 1? They have Patrick freaking Mahomes. I understand. Patrick freaking Mahomes is a freaking good player. I get that. However, I like Baltimore. I like Baltimore a lot. I know that the Ravens have underachieved in the postseason. I get that. I thought last year they underachieved in the postseason. At some point, they're going to get over the hump. And the addition of Derrick Henry, for me, in my mind, is what puts Baltimore over the hump in 2024. So I have Baltimore as the best returning team of the teams that made the playoffs in 2024. I go Baltimore 1. Kansas City, who won the Super Bowl last year over San Francisco, I have them at 2. So don't fret, don't fear. I have Kansas City right there on the list. If you think it's a crime that I don't have Kansas City 1, that's fine. I think Kansas City's still going to be very good in 2024. However, Derrick Henry in Baltimore, man, that scares me. Derrick Henry lined up beside Lamar Jackson, that scares me to death. So I think Baltimore's going to be very good. I like Kansas City 2nd. That leaves 12 teams from the playoffs last year. That leaves Houston, San Fran, Green Bay, Detroit, Philly, Buffalo, Miami, LA, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Tampa Bay. Who would you, the Tolos, have as 1 and 2 of the returning 2023 playoff teams? Again, I have Baltimore 1, Kansas City 2. The third team may surprise you. Of the remaining, is it San Francisco? Is it Detroit, who made the NFC title game last year? Is it Philly? Is it my Dallas Cowboys? No. I have Houston, number 3, ranking the best to worst of the 2023 NFL playoff teams. Boy, I'll tell you what. I'm high on Houston. I'm high on D'Amico Ryans. I'm high on C.J. Stroud. Last year, rookie season, he was phenomenal. Overachieved. Incredible year for him last year. Houston's going to get there. And trust me, that pains me to say, being a Cowboys fan, it pains me to think that Houston will be the team that gets to the Super Bowl before Dallas does, but I'm here to tell you, they will. Will it be this year? I don't know. Will it be next year? I don't know, but I think it will be soon. I do think Houston is a lot closer to the Super Bowl than people realize. So I have Baltimore 1, Kansas City 2, Houston 3. If you just tuned in, welcome to Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. Diesel's on vacation. He will be back next week. I am ranking the 2023 NFL playoff teams from best to worst in 2024, what I expect from them. There's 14 total teams that made the playoffs. To recap, I have Baltimore 1, Kansas City 2, Houston 3. John Dog chimes in on the text line, which you can do so by texting 71307. Start your text with the word fan. John Dog says, Cole, you are used to underachieving being a Cowboys fan. John Dog, you're right. No pushback, no arguing, no disagreement. I will take the bullets that you fired at me, and you know what? I'll say you're right. I have become accustomed to underachieving. There's no doubt about that. You sign up for being a Cowboys fan, guess what? You'll underachieve. You'll know what underachievement is too. That's part of it. So I can't disagree with you there. I like it. Thanks for listening. Number 4. The 4th best returning playoff team from 2023. They played in the Super Bowl in the NFC, represented the NFC, if you will, San Francisco. Number 4, the 49ers. The 49ers, in my opinion, are going to be a fascinating team. I like Brock Purdy, but I do question what Brock Purdy will look like. Let's say if Deebo Samuel, who has battled injury in his NFL career, I don't want to call him injury prone, but he's close to it. If he goes down, who does Brock Purdy rely on? I know he's got a very good tight end, but with Brandon Ayuk, as it looks right now, not playing for the 49ers, that's a big question mark for me at the wide receiver position. I still have him fourth best, though, so don't come at me and say they're too low. You can't put San Fran above Houston, Kansas City, and Baltimore, can you? I cannot. Number 5. This one may surprise you as well. Jordan Love, the Green Bay Packers, they demolished my Dallas Cowboys in the wild card game last year. First game of the playoffs in Big D, Jerry World, Jordan Love wrecked shop. Demolished that Dan Quinn-led Cowboys defense. So I have Green Bay at 5. I have Detroit at 6. Detroit last year, they played in the NFC Championship game against San Francisco. You may say, well, Detroit's too low at 6. I'm here to tell you, I'm not a Jared Goff hater, but I don't know if I believe in Jared Goff enough for him to go put back-to-back seasons on the board like he did last year. I don't know if Jared Goff's a good enough quarterback to go do it 2 years in a row. People tell you all the time, reaching success is hard. It's difficult, right? However, maintaining that success, staying at the top of the conference, is even more difficult. I don't know that Detroit does that. Can they? Sure. But at the end of the day, it's Jared Goff. I don't hate the guy. It's just, I don't know. Not sold on him quite yet. At number 7, I went back and forth with 6 and 7 here because the NFC East, obviously my team's in it, and I don't like ranking NFC East teams above my team. However, the NFC East last year had 2 teams get in, Philadelphia and Dallas. Of the playoff teams from 2023, at number 7, I put the Philadelphia Eagles. I like Philadelphia at 7. I think that's a good spot, not just in terms of the entire NFL, but the teams that made the playoffs last year. I think that's a good spot for them. They acquired Saquon Barkley in the offseason, right? Saquon Barkley's a big addition in Philadelphia. Really good running back. I like them at 7. Where's Buffalo, Cole? Where is Buffalo, you say? Buffalo's got to be on the list, right? Well, Buffalo's fallen. No, it's not the movie London Has Fallen. It's Buffalo Has Fallen. I just don't buy them, man. I can't trust them. I just don't know that I can trust them. You lost 2 really good weapons in the offseason at the receiver position. What does Josh Allen do without Gabe Davis, right? I want to trust Josh Allen so bad. I really do. I like Josh Allen. But you're talking about failing to meet the mark year after year after year. Buffalo's failed to meet the mark year after year. I don't know, man. I could be wrong, but I've got them at 8. I've got Buffalo at 8. I just don't trust them yet. You lose 2 really good receivers. Let's see. Miami, I have at 9. I have the LA Rams at 10. Stafford's old. They're not the same team they were. Could they surprise people? Could they surprise me? Could they prove me wrong and be more like 6 or 7? Sure. But I think when you get to 6 through 12, there's a lot of parity there because those could flip-flop very easily. I have the Cleveland Browns at 11 of 14. Cleveland made the playoffs last year. Pittsburgh made the playoffs. Dallas and Tampa Bay also made the playoffs. There were 14 playoff teams in 2023. I have LA at 10, Cleveland at 11, Pittsburgh at 12. I have my Dallas Cowboys at 13, and I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 14. Yes, you call me a Dallas Cowboy fanboy, but look, I just put my Dallas Cowboys at the 13th best team of the 2023 playoff teams. See, I can be unbiased at times, right? Sometimes I'll be biased, but I can be unbiased. So what say you? Where am I wrong? Where am I right? What would you have done differently when you look at the 14 teams that made the playoffs last year? Again, from bottom to top, I had Tampa Bay, 14, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, LA at 10, Miami, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Detroit, Green Bay at 5, San Francisco, Houston at 3, Kansas City at 2, and Baltimore at 1. I just think the addition of Derrick Henry is going to be enough. I really like the Ravens this season. I really do. On the text line, 71307, texter says, "Fan, you may not trust Goff to do it 2 years in a row, but I trust Dan Campbell." Fair point. Fair point. And that's a good point. I mean, I agree with you. I do trust Dan Campbell, but at the end of the day, texter, the coach, for as good as a coach as they are, they've got to have the dogs to go do it, right? They've got to have the guys. They got to have the Jimmies and Joes to go do it. I'm not saying Detroit doesn't have the Jimmies and Joes. I think they do. I just don't consider them a top 3 team in the NFL. But I do trust Dan Campbell. To your point, I like Dan Campbell. Who doesn't like Dan Campbell? They're really, really good. They're really good, but we'll see if they can do it 2 years in a row. Texter says, also, when you rank playoff teams, there is basically at least one, maybe two you have to remove because they won't make it this year. That's right. So, who is it? Oh, texter's asking, who do I think won't make it? One or two that won't make it? That's a good question. It's a good question. Of the two, let's say two that don't make it. Here's the deal. As long as Dallas wins close to 10 games, even if they don't win the East, I think they'll still make it. Even if Philly wins the East. However, if Dallas doesn't perform and live up to expectations in 2024, I could see my Cowboys being left out. I really could. I could see Tampa Bay being left out. I don't know. Cleveland has too good of a defense to miss the playoffs, in my opinion. Deshaun Watson didn't have a good year last year, and they made the playoffs. I think Deshaun's better in 24, and their defense is good. LA is interesting. LA is a very interesting team in terms of making the playoffs. Not quite sure there. It wouldn't surprise me if Tampa Bay didn't make it with Dave Canales. But then again, the NFC South's wide open, right? The NFC South is wide open. The Falcons, the Panthers, the Bucs. I don't see Tampa Bay winning the South, and the Saints. Right now, I think Atlanta wins the South, just to be honest with you. But again, if I have to pick, to your question, texter, Tampa Bay maybe on the outside looking in. Pittsburgh's very interesting. Do I trust Russell Wilson? I do not. I do not. I trust Mike Tomlin. He's a heck of a coach. Very consistent. Consistently average for a lot of years, but he was consistent. You know, everybody says, oh, he's never had a losing season. Well, that's low expectations. It's a good record to have. It's a good title to have. But at the end of the day, they hadn't been a championship team in a long time. I don't know about Pittsburgh. They're a talented team. I think they won. I'm not looking, but I think they won 10 games last year. Russell Wilson's the X factor. Could go in a good way, could go in a bad way. You have Justin Fields as well. It's a very interesting story with those two quarterbacks. It really is. Texter says, yeah, I just think Dan brought the dog out in golf, to your point. He did. He did. Dan has that ability. He has that ability. Dan Campbell has the ability to get the most out of his team. He really does. They weren't the best team on paper last year, but Dan Campbell got the most out of them. He really did. He's a great coach. Great coach. Texter from the 432 says the Bengals will take out one of the teams from the AFC North. Yeah, that's true. That's true, because the Bengals last year obviously did not make it because Joe was hurt. I agree with that. AFC North. Let me look real quick before we run. Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers. Ooh, that's tough. That's tough. So going back to the other texter who asked me to pick who was going to be left out, I'd probably say Pittsburgh. That's going to be a good division. That is a good – is that the best division in football? Is there a better division in the NFL than the AFC North with the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, and Steelers? With Deshaun Watson, if he does play better, Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, Joe healthy, Derrick Henry now lining up beside Lamar Jackson. That's a brutal, brutal division. But you're right. Somebody's going to be left out. Could be Pittsburgh. It could be. We'll see. I can't wait, man. I love the NFL season. I'm stoked. I'm excited. I'm ready for it to get here. We will hit the Daily Wires, update you on what's happening in the sports world. On the other side, I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate.
5. Killing it, bro.
The ball's in your court. Sound off now at 844 fan phone.
This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
Ending hour number 2 with the Daily Wires. I went over a little bit in that last segment, and by a little bit, I mean a good bit. So this will be a very short segment here, but it was a good conversation. Appreciate you being a part of the show. Daily Wires for you. USA Gymnastics officials say an arbitration panel won't reconsider a decision asking gymnast Jordan Chiles to return the bronze medal she was awarded in the floor exercise at the Paris Olympics. USA Gymnastics says it will continue efforts to let Chiles keep the medal. I hope I'm saying that right. I truly don't know if I'm saying it right or wrong. The Braves, they actually won, but it took 10 innings last night. 10 innings. The Braves won 1-0. This puts Atlanta back to 62-56 on the season. 7 games back in the East. Charlie Morton gets to start for the Bravos tonight in San Francisco's 9:45 first pitch. I did see where Michael Harris Jr. is expected to make a return. Could the Braves go on a late season push? You can sense the enthusiasm in my voice when talking about the Braves. Cleveland Browns rookie defensive tackle Mike Hall Jr. was charged with domestic violence in Ohio after allegedly, keyword, threatening a woman with a gun Monday night, according to a police report. The fan who caught Shohei Ohtani's historic 176th home run is about to be a whole lot richer. How rich? TMZ Sports has learned the man's putting the ball up for auction. It's expected to net him a small fortune. So I would assume millions, right? We'll see. We'll see. The guys, oh, here we go. Not millions. The guys at Heritage Auctions say the guy who snagged the record-setting baseball is selling it right now around $200K. So, okay, not quite millions, but still $200K for a baseball. 49ers canceled their joint practice with the Saints today because they have too many, what? Too many injuries. Hey, we're too hurt. We'll catch y'all another time. How about that, okay? Is that good? This is crazy. Hellman's Mayo has announced on Tuesday, this morning, the release of Will Levis's number 8, not perfume, parfum de mayonnaise. That's right, mayonnaise-scented perfume. What do you think about that? That might be a little much. And lastly, River Ryan of the Dodgers will undergo season-ending Tommy John surgery. The River Ryan pitcher for the Dodgers. Seems like the Dodgers are cursed, man, when it comes to pitching injuries. That's a tough one. Another injury going toward the Tommy John. All right, coming up next. How many teams above South Carolina in the SP Plus rankings from ESPN do I think would lose to the Gamecocks in 2024? I'll get your thoughts on that as well. This is Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate. Madcraft, should Miami be ranked ahead of Clemson in the AP poll? Maybe. What do you think? You think they should be, Madcraft? It's a good question. I think they should be pretty close in terms of where they are, right? Then I'll put you a title there.
Whether you're looking for a loan or want to grow your money with a certificate, Founders Federal Credit Union can help you move the chains on your financial goals. Not a member? No problem. Visit foundersfcu.com today to see if you qualify. Federally insured by NCUA, membership qualification required, equal housing commitment. Conditions apply.
All right. First thing I do at the end of each hour is your GXP5.
That's it.
Just so you don't have to time crunch. Ben, will you hand me my phone over there? Thank you, man. Hour number 3 of Wire to Wire coming at you. I'm Cole Bryson. Good to be with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Want to let you know our friends over at the Spartanburg Gamecock Club. If you remember, we did an event up there in April with the Gamecock Club in Spartanburg. They have asked me to tell you, Gamecock fans, that if you were planning on attending the event tonight at the Freight Yard in Spartanburg, it's the Gamecock Club 2024 kickoff party. It starts in 1 hour, and there has been weather, but the good news is the event is still on. Tiffany Irvin, Lee Thornton, the people over at Spartanburg County Gamecock Club wanted me to tell you, if you're a Gamecock fan, come on out tonight at the Freight Yard in Spartanburg. Always good to work with our friends over at the Spartanburg County Gamecock Club. Appreciate them letting me know of that so I can let you know as well. Speaking of Gamecocks, that's where we're going in this segment. The SP Plus rankings from ESPN are out. I'll explain to you. If you don't know what SP Plus is, I'll explain what that means. But my question for you, Tolos, which stands for Turn It On, Leave It On, that are Gamecock fans in the audience, how many teams ranked above South Carolina do you have South Carolina beating in a head-to-head matchup in 2024? So, for example, if Team A's ranked ahead of South Carolina in these rankings, do you think they would beat them in 2024? Do you think South Carolina's better than them in 2024? According to ESPN Analytics, 47% of the teams have at least a 5% chance of making the new expanded playoff. It's fascinating to look at these rankings because South Carolina, as we all know, is not going to be ranked in the top 15. However, I do believe somewhere in the 30s is a good place to have them. South Carolina, to me, is not worthy of being ranked. I don't think they're worthy of being ranked near the top 25 yet. But when you start getting into 30s, maybe that's where we're going to agree. Would you say they deserve to be in the top 30? I don't know that they would. I don't know. I think somewhere between 30 and probably 45 is a good place for them to be in 2024. Maybe you say that's still too high, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating to think if you think South Carolina, if you think they're deserving of being a little bit more closer to 30, let me know. 71307. On the text line, Fat Paid says, let me know if you need someone to fight. I'm free on Friday. I already gave Diesel the work. I'd hate for you to be jealous. Fat Paid, as you know, you're right. 5 o'clock fight right now. I have news for you, though. Diesel and I haven't announced this yet, but during football season, we will be placing the 5 o'clock fight on the back burner for a few months. I'm not saying the 5 o'clock fight's going anywhere. I'm not saying the 5 o'clock fight's coming to an end. However, for us to allow the 5 o'clock fight to be what it needs to be throughout the entirety of the year, we don't want to run it in the ground, right? We don't want the 5 o'clock fight to run its course, if you will. We want it to still be fresh. We want it to still be something that you look forward to. So, during football season, I'm here to tell you, we're going to talk football. And I know a 5 o'clock fight, we still a lot of times did talk football. But I'm here to tell you that the 5 o'clock segment is going to be bigger and better than it's ever been during football season. It won't be the same every day, but there will be some segments that do repeat themselves and some that don't. So If you love the 5 o'clock fight, don't worry. Don't worry. It's not going anywhere. We're not banishing that segment. However, we are plating the segment. We're just going to put it on the back burner, if you will. You know, if you do something every day, sometimes it will run its course. You know that? If you're upset about it, don't worry. It's going to be okay. All right, text line. 432. Huge Gamecock fan here. But we have too many uncertainties. If they put things together, sure, they could beat several. I think the injuries, like last year, says the texter, could derail the season. Who knows? And that's the greatness of college football. Well, yeah, injuries, to your point, texter, can derail anybody's season. I just don't know. I would hope that South Carolina doesn't have the injuries in 2024 that they had in 25. Really. Because on the offensive line especially, it was the war of attrition. I don't know, man. Again, you can't predict injuries. You can't predict who's going to be healthy and not. But I understand your point. But I don't think South Carolina is going to be as beat up as they were last year. All right, text line blowing up about the Gamecocks. 344 says, Gamecocks deserve nothing. People are blinded. Freshman quarterback, no proven receivers, injured RB1, and the same DC who gave up $450 a game. Texter 344. I don't know who you're a fan of, but it doesn't sound like you're a South Carolina Gamecock fan. It doesn't sound like you're a Gamecock fan. Let me address your text piece by piece. People are blinded. You know, I understand maybe it's frustration. Maybe you're a fan of a different team. Let me say this. There are reasons, as we did green flags and red flags yesterday, there are reasons to have optimism. There are reasons to question what South Carolina will be in 2024, but there's nothing wrong with having hope. You got to remember, we're talking about a fan base here in South Carolina that has literally pulled for their program, pulled for their team, despite years of nothing. I don't know that there are many more loyal fan bases than South Carolina. I really don't. There are good fan bases out there, but what has South Carolina football done? Other than the 3 back-to-back 11-win seasons under Spurrier, to give South Carolina fans hope. South Carolina fans, could they be better? Sure. Could every fan base be better in certain aspects? Sure. Do they sometimes leave early and sometimes empty in the second half? Sure. Are they the perfect fan base? Absolutely not. However, texter, to your text, people are blinded. I don't know that I agree with that. People pull for South Carolina despite them giving anything for Gamecock fans to pull for. This fan base has to cling to hope because they haven't really had anything else to cling to, right? What else have they had to cling to other than the few years of Spurrier? Shane Beamer hasn't shown them anything yet. However, they have to have hope. Let me get to the rest of your text. Freshman quarterback. Okay, well, there's a lot of good freshman quarterbacks. There's some that aren't good. No proven receivers. The receiver room was my red flag yesterday. The receiver room's where I will disagree. Where I will agree with you, texter. I do think the receiver room is a question mark. It is a red flag, if you will. I've got that receiver room lined up. I'm going to ask Shane Beamer about that receiver room on Friday when he joins the show. I'm very intrigued by the receiver room. So I don't disagree with you there. It's going to be a receiver room that, you're right, they're not proven. They're unproven. Somebody's going to have to step up. Injured RB1. Talking about Rocket Sanders, I guess. Same DC who gave up $450 a game. Listen, I understand your frustration, but man, I just don't know that I can agree with you. They deserve nothing. they're a fan base. And I have a lot of friends who are South Carolina fans. I have more friends who are Gamecock fans than Tiger fans. They're a starved fan base. What is South Carolina Gamecock football on the field given Gamecock fans to be excited about consistently? Well, you can't answer that unless you say nothing. So I can't say they deserve nothing. Texter says, we can't base any facts until we actually get some data on the field, in my opinion. Sellers can be dynamic, but we have to see some film, put it on tape. Well, that's part of the preseason, right? We give our analysis on who we think will be good, who we think will be bad, and what South Carolina will look like. Appreciate you texting into the show, which you can do 71307. Start your text with the word fan. I asked the question, what do you think South Carolina should be ranked? 30s, 40s, lower, higher? Phone lines are open right now. If you haven't done so, call away. 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. If you have not called into the show before and you are a South Carolina Gamecock fan, I invite you to do so. Give your opinion on the discussion. Again, 844-326-3663. That's the number to call in to Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. Good to be with you on this Tuesday. Let's see here. Getting back to the text. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Texter says, Gamecocks question you asked. Rank 35. Let's see how we – let me click on the text. Let's see how we play our first two games, and then I will re-rank them. So Texter says they should be at about 35. I don't know that I disagree with that. I don't know that that's 10 outside of the top 25. You got to remember, top 25, you're looking at the bottom. You're looking at teams like Iowa, NC State, USC, Kansas, Arizona. A&M's ranked 20. I think A&M might be ranked a little too high for me. Unproven head coach at a big-time SEC program. Just suffered a major injury to a running back yesterday. I don't know. Mike Elko, I don't know that he's 20th best, his team's 20th best in the country right now. I just don't. I don't know. I don't want to say the jury's still out on Mike Elko because I think he's a good coach. Mike Elko showed that you can win at Duke. And if you can win at Duke, you can win at a lot of places. But my point is, the SEC is not the ACC. Texas A&M isn't Duke. Yeah, he's going to have a plethora of money now, right? He's going to have plenty of money now to go get guys. But he's in a different world at Texas A&M. That's my concern. That's my concern. One texter says, I rank him at 35. Let's see. Oh, I just read that one. Another texter says, I rank them about 32. Okay, not bad. I don't totally disagree there. Texter from the 344 says, I pull for them to win every game, but I'm also a realist and just don't feed myself lies, so it's easier for me to be mentally prepared for a loss. I understand that. If you have low expectations going into every game, I've learned that with the Cowboys. I've started doing that a little bit lately. Have low expectations. That way you're not disappointed, and then when you do win, you're excited, all right? Not a bad way to be. Texter from the 432. The Gamecocks give us just enough hope. Beat Clemson, beat Georgia when we shouldn't. The Black Magic teams and Spurrier teams just added to our hope. Well, that's right. That's right. They did. Spurrier teams, they gave you a lot of hope. And they should have given you a lot of hope because the Spurrier teams in South Carolina, for the most part, were very good. I'll tell you this. South Carolina is in a situation that a lot of people don't realize is a tough, unique situation. We talked about this yesterday with Deion Sanders in Colorado, right? It's fascinating because they are in a very tough conference, and I'm not giving them a tough conference excuse. I'm not giving them a hall pass because they play in the SEC. However, you do have coaches that come in like Spurrier and give you just enough hope. But the reality of it is, the bottom line is, you're not going to consistently attract coaches like Spurrier. And in order to maintain success at the highest level, you've got to consistently attract great coaches, right? The top programs do that. The top programs consistently attract the best of the best. Nick Saban retired, you get Kalen DeBoer. There aren't many coaches out there right now better than Kalen DeBoer. His record speaks for itself. South Carolina, my point is, they're never going to be a destination place for head coaches. It's never going to be a place where coaches want to end their career. It's a stepping stone job. It's going to take a lot to change that. It's not a bad job. I think Shane Beamer will tell you that it's a great job. Again, if you didn't know, Shane Beamer Friday on the show, 3 o'clock. Hope you can catch him if you are a South Carolina Gamecock fan. It's a tough place to be. You've got to consistently hire great coaches or hire guys that can keep your program relevant, successful. South Carolina, outside of Spurrier, hasn't had another coach that's done that. Yeah, Lou Holtz pulled upsets. Yeah, Shane Beamer has pulled some really nice upsets. Beating Tennessee a couple of years ago and then beating Clemson back-to-back weeks. It's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible wins. Had a lot to do with Spencer Rattler, right? All of a sudden, the play calling magically changed going into that Tennessee game. I understand Gamecock's frustration, but don't act like you're in a place where you should just expect to be successful, is my point. Texter says, if you think Carolina makes a bowl this year, that probably puts them in the 30s at the lowest. 7 and 5 teams continue or sometimes squeak into the top 25. Texter goes on to say, if Carolina goes 6 and 6 in the SEC, they're probably 33 and 40. 616 says it took Spurrier 4 to 5 years before he showed he was successful there. It did. I don't disagree with that. However, the difference is, Texter from the 616, Spurrier was already proven to a much higher degree before he came to South Carolina, right? There was not much left Spurrier had to prove in his career. Shane Beamer wasn't a proven coach when he came and took the job at South Carolina, is my point. Could turn out to be a good coach. But to use it took Spurrier 4 to 5 years before he showed he was successful, to use that to buy Beamer more time, I don't know that that's quite fair. Beamer and Spurrier, when they both took the South Carolina job, are two completely different coaches. Completely different coaches. Again, Beamer's proving himself right now, trying to prove himself. Spurrier, look, he was Steve Spurrier. People already knew who he was, what he'd done at Florida, right? It's fascinating. I think somewhere in the 30s is a good spot. A couple of texts had him at 35. One said 32. I didn't see anything much higher than that. Texter says, when I say they deserve nothing, I meant they deserve nothing in regards to be high in any preseason rankings or anything. Well, that's true, Texter. They have to be good the year before. They have to finish the year before pretty high in order for them to be in the preseason rankings, right? There's nothing they did last year to get them into those rankings this year. Texter says, you're right, Cole. It's hard to buy Beamer more time compared to Spurrier, but how many dudes have told us no? Fuente, Smart, Napier, Herman. Well, that's the thing. That's my point. Those coaches tell you no in terms of South Carolina football because they know what it's going to take to win there. Spurrier is the only coach that's shown you can have success at South Carolina. I mean, I know Lou Holtz was good at times, but also Lou Holtz was really, really bad at times. When you talk about guys like Fuente, Smart, Napier, and Herman saying no, that's my whole point. South Carolina's not, and in my opinion, never will be a destination job for proven commodities. Can you get good coaches? Sure, you can get good coaches. But Beamer ain't telling South Carolina no because Beamer knows that either that or Virginia Tech was his choices, right? Texter from the 416 says, true, jury is still out, but Florida is a much better program than South Carolina. Historically, yes. Not right now. It's pretty bad right now, but historically, yes. Few more before we run. The text line blowing up. Appreciate your thoughts. I'll get a few more text in, and then I have to hit a break, and then we'll get to Eric McLean, Heather Dinich beef when it comes to Clemson's Cade Klubnik. If you didn't see that beef between them two, stay tuned because it was very fascinating. Texter says, recruiting when Spurrier was here and now with Shane is apples and oranges. To your point, it's viewed as a stepping stone. How many kids have we lost to other NIL deals at other schools? Well, that's going to happen, right? In the world of NIL, that's going to happen. But you're right. It is apples to oranges. It is. And it's going to be like that. A proven coach can change that. But again, how many proven coaches on the back end of their career, kind of like Mac Brown did going back to North Carolina, how many proven coaches on the back end are say, you know what? I see what's at South Carolina. I'm going to go take that job at South Carolina. Not many. Not many. One more. 434 says, which is why getting rid of Beamer after this year would be a mistake. We have to make it a place someone can come build. Let me make sure there's no more text there. I believe that's it. We have to make it a place someone can come build. I see your point. You gotta give guys time. But at the same time, I don't think giving guys more time than they deserve is warranted when you say, well, it took Spurrier 4 to 5 years, you know? It's a little bit different of an animal. Again, I say that's apples to oranges. All right, Eric McLean, Heather Dinich beef about the quarterback at Clemson, Cade Klubnik. If you haven't seen what's going on Twitter, Eric McLean not happy on X. We'll talk about it next. Because to Clemson, they've been down the last few years. Even while they've still been competitive, they've been down. So is what Heather Dinich said, is she off base? Is she off on this? Or do you think she actually has some legs to stand on when it comes to saying, look, they've got to go get a quarterback? If you tell me they've got to go get a quarterback, if you say that in a statement, to me that sounds like you're saying they have no quarterback. Because if they had a quarterback, they've got to go get a quarterback. If they've got no quarterback, rather, if I said that wrong, I apologize. If they've got no quarterback, they've got to go get a quarterback, is what it sounds like Heather Dinich is saying. Cade Klubnik being back until we see offense improvement, I don't see why there should be so much love for Clemson. Heather Dinich, in your mind, she may be right. She may have legs to stand on. I will tell you this. I would tell Heather Dinich that quarterbacks, generational quarterbacks, specifically speaking, newsflash, don't grow on trees. People, I think, made a mistake of seeing Deshaun Watson followed by Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. I think they made a mistake there and thought to themselves, oh, Dabo Swinney can get generational quarterbacks every year. He can have a starter at quarterback every single year who's a generational type guy. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people made. I'm not saying Heather Dinich made that mistake herself. However, I am telling you, they don't grow on trees. Go find me 3 generational quarterbacks in college football this year. And I don't mean Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel's a good quarterback at Oregon. I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks this season. I don't mean Jalen Milroe at Alabama, even though I like him. Quinn Ewers, I don't know. I don't know that you can say Quinn Ewers is a generational type quarterback. That's my point. Generational quarterbacks are not the same as really good quarterbacks or even great quarterbacks. Generational quarterbacks are in a category, a tier by themselves. What I mean is, good luck getting a generational type quarterback year after year. Now, does Cade still have to prove himself? Sure, he does. There's a lot that Cade Klubnik has to prove. And our text line, I'll get to the text. A lot of text coming in, 71307. I understand that Cade Klubnik has to step up this season. But there's a lot of other good teams. My point is, there's a lot of other good teams in college football this year with good defenses that have a really strong secondary, really strong defense, whatever you want to call it. And they're still a good team. They're still competitive. They're still a national contender. I don't think McCord at Ohio State's a generational type quarterback. My point is, I don't think you have to have a generational type quarterback to be relevant. Has Clemson fallen off so much that they're not relevant? I don't think so. So to that point, I think Heather Dinich is a little off. I understand her Cade Klubnik point that he has a lot to prove. I don't think there's Clemson fans out there that would disagree with that. He does, in 2024, have to step up. He does have to prove the doubters wrong, if you will. And I know that the Clemson fans in our audience don't want to continue to hear the Dabo and Clemson disrespect. I get that. But the only way to get that disrespect from the national media to stop going away is doing one thing, and that's proving them wrong. You have a great opportunity on August 31st to prove them wrong when you play them dogs, right? I don't know that you're going to come out of that game with a win, but what I am saying is if you want to prove to the national media that the narrative is not true with Dabo Swinney and Clemson, you've got to go be competitive with Georgia. The reality of it is, if you disagree with what Heather Dinich has to say, the reality is if you go, as I said this yesterday, if you go into that game and get whooped by Georgia, her narrative is going to be right on point. You're not going to be able to disagree with Heather Dinich if that's the case. If Cade Klubnik goes up against a Georgia defense that's very good and struggles and make mistakes and has some turnovers and makes some bad decisions, you're not going to be able to criticize Heather Dinich then, because that's what she said. She said Cade Klubnik's back until we see offensive improvement. I don't see why there should be so much love for the Tigers. All right, to the text line we go. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Fat Page says, I 100% agree. If Klubnik, in parentheses, DJU2, is your answer, you're asking the wrong question. Texter from the 903 says, nah, dog, ESPN always going to hate on us. She's been watching too much Paul Feinbaum. I like it. 621 says, as a Clemson fan, I agree with Heather. Cade has to prove himself. It's true. He does. He does have to prove himself. Clemson's still relevant because they are competitive in games, but that relevance that Clemson does have, it's going to wear off very quickly if they don't show that they're competitive against the best in August 31st, right? Texter from the 803 says, I wonder if Dabo pays off ESPN to create bulletin board material to fuel Clemson's hate fire. They all doubt us, blah, 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 says the texter from the 803. 491 chimes in on the conversation. If you want to argue a player has a lot to prove, I think every team has to prove themselves. All a preseason poll is doing is going off of last year. Well, texter, a preseason poll is going off of last year, sure, but it's also based off of what they have returning this year. And that matters a lot, right? Whether Cade Klubnik is going to be good in 2024 or not, the fact that he's returning with the same head coach and the same offensive coordinator in Garrett Riley is, and I don't care if you disagree with this or not, that is a reason they're number 14 in the country. Polls like quarterbacks who return with their coordinator and with their head coach. Was Cade the best last year? No. Was he the worst? No. Does he have room for improvement? He absolutely does. But they were ranked number 14 in the preseason poll after taking a step back last season with 9-4 record. Their first season without double-digit wins since 2010 in the program's third year under head coach Dabo Swinney. Not to mention 3 straight years outside the college football playoff following 6 consecutive seasons in the college football playoff where Clemson appeared in 4 national championship games and won 2 of them. So the Heather Dinich hate, I will say, I think it's warranted. I don't think she's 100% right on everything she said, but I think it is warranted. And the only way to get people like her to stop having those kind of comments is to go out and prove it. Now, Eric McLean, again, if you just tuned in, Eric McLean, the former Tiger, said, here we go with this trash again. He tagged Get Up, ESPN, and said, look, I'm available at your convenience to go and defend Clemson on Get Up. I don't think they're going to ask Eric to come on and defend Clemson. I don't think that's the national media's narrative, is defend Clemson. Listen, the national media, ever since Dabo Swinney's gotten the job, ever since Dabo Swinney has taken his stance on building a program from the ground up, ever since Dabo Swinney has had a faith-based organization, the national media has done nothing but attack Dabo Swinney. So Dabo Swinney's always been in the limelight in terms of being attacked by the national media. That's just who he is. He's become accustomed to it, and he doesn't care, to be quite frank. But the criticism to Cade Klubnik, to that point, I think it's fair. JB on the YouTube stream chimes in and says Clemson will be a 10 to 11 win team if Klubnik cuts down on the turnovers. That's what cost the Tigers last year in their 4 losses. Yes, it was the turnovers. It also had to do with Cade's decision-making. We talked to David Hood on the show yesterday of TigerNet.com. And by the way, David joins us during football season every Monday at 4:20. David said it yesterday. I asked him if Cade's red flag was that turnover, it was the interceptions. And he said, yeah, he said it was, but he said he also felt like Cade Klubnik last year at times played too fast. Didn't see the game as slow as people thought he would. Didn't have the eye for defenses the way the way the coaching staff thought he would. What I mean by that is when you talk about pulling, a pass option, run pass option, when you talk about pulling it and the fumbles and the interceptions, he just didn't see the defense and he didn't make the decisions that the coaching staff put him in place to make. Certainly when you throw interceptions, sometimes it's on the receiver. They'll drop the ball or whatever, but it wasn't like his receivers were dropping the balls into the hands of the defensive backs last year. A lot of Cade's mistakes he made were self-inflicted. And I think that's why a lot of people have that criticism toward Cade, because they were self-inflicted, right? And if he proves that in 2024, he's a different type of player. If he proves that he can go out and lead Clemson to a playoff, and heck, you're going to find out really quick. I said yesterday that I think that Georgia game's in a good spot, but it also could be a bad spot. If Clemson doesn't show up, it's a terrible spot to play Georgia, because the national media will eat you alive from the very get-go in week one, and all the hate that's coming toward Dabo Swinney and Clemson now. If you think it's a lot now, wait till you lose to Georgia. And if you lose to Georgia in an embarrassing fashion, it's only going to get worse. The way it could be in a good spot is if right off the bat, Klubnik comes out and proves the haters wrong. Well, guess what? People like Heather Dennett will have to eat their words, right? I don't think that's going to happen. But if Clemson wanted to shut this narrative down, they could do it, and they could do it very, very quickly. We'll continue the conversation as well as get your thoughts. 71307 is the way you can get in touch with the show. I'm Cole Bryson. Diesel is on vacation. He'll be back next week. This is the Fan Upstate.
Sweepstakes at the door. Call in.
What games for these teams that I'm going to list could be really good opportunities, but also could be not so good matchups? For example, what I mean here, the AP Top 25 came out yesterday. A few games that could mix up the rankings early in the season and also late in the season in a big way. I'll give you a great example, and then you can tell me what teams you think could be knocked out, what games, what opponents, what ranked matchups, top 25 ranked matchups you think could send somebody out of the top 25. Georgia, Clemson. Number 1, Georgia to start the season versus number 14, Clemson. Obviously, if Clemson loses this game, they will fall in the rankings. It won't be a drastic fall because they will lose to the number 1 team in all of the land, so it won't be that big of a deal. However, it's a key game for both in terms of their ranking. The Bulldogs season opener against the Tigers at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta will provide the first look at a revamped passing game that lost star tight end Brock Bowers and receivers Ladd McConkey, Marcus Roseme, quarterback Carson Beck will play behind one of the best offensive lines. We all know how good that offensive line will be. They're going to have some new faces step up on the perimeter. However, I don't think it'll be that big of a deal when you talk about going against Clemson rather than going up against Ohio State or Oregon, who I do think will be very good. Ohio State's schedule is very interesting. They don't have anybody that could really shake up the rankings or send shockwaves early. They have Iowa on October 5th, number 25 Iowa. Don't really see much out of them this season. What I do see as a huge game, not just based on rankings, but in terms of the college football playoff, is Ohio State versus Oregon on October 12th. While the Ducks can't overlook teams like Boise State, Oregon State, and Michigan State, I think this is the only game on their schedule that will really provide them a test. I think we looked at their schedule yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. It'll be Oregon's first marquee matchup in the Big Ten, and there's a decent chance, and I say a really good chance, that both teams will go into the game ranked among the top 5 and undefeated. It'll be a good test for both, but also I think both of these teams, Oregon and Ohio State, are playoff teams. I really do. Oregon, Ohio State, and the Big Ten are probably going to dominate that conference. One that's fascinating year in and year out is the Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma, in Dallas, October 12th. Even though you have the change of address for Oklahoma, this game, when it comes to rivalry games, this game matters a ton. And what people forget is that in the past 10 years, Oklahoma has dominated this rivalry. They really have. So it's fascinating to look at Texas, Oklahoma, who, by the way, Oklahoma is ranked 16th in the country. Texas is ranked 4 at this matchup because this could be a big shakeup if Oklahoma were to win. Again, as good as Texas has been the last few years, they still lost to Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma could go upset number 4, Texas in Dallas on the 12th of October, you talk about a shakeup. You could see one right there. And then for Alabama, I'll say theirs is obviously Georgia, September 28th, early in the season. Not only will this be Kalen DeBoer's first SEC game as Bama's coach, it'll be against Kirby Smart and Georgia, the most talented team in the country. Everybody will be watching. Everybody will be ready to change the narrative on Alabama if Alabama doesn't find themselves competitive late in this game. Because Nick Saban, he went 108-9 at Bryant-Denny as Alabama's coach and lost only one SEC game at home in his final 8 seasons. That's right. That's not a typo. I said that right. that dominance will be hard to replicate. So I think in terms of the narratives and stories of college football, Alabama, Georgia on September 28th will be as a big of a game as we will see all year, not just because of the two teams being really good, but the narrative of maybe Alabama not being who they once were. I don't think they'll get steamrolled by Georgia. I think they'll still be competitive. But, man, you let them lose and you let them lose bad, and all of a sudden the boo birds for the Alabama Crimson Tide will be out. Texter from the 415 says, I don't think it gets talked about enough how Clemson has lacked difference makers at the wide receiver position. It can make a difference in making a quarterback look, let me click on the rest of the text, better or worse. I miss T. Higgins and Justin Ross, Nuke Hopkins and Sammy Watkins, all those big play guys. Texter, I'm here to tell you, I 100% agree with you. I've said that on multiple accounts that, yeah, the quarterback's not the same, but you look at the receivers they've lost over the years, and they haven't replaced them with top-tier guys, to your point. Hopefully Tyler Brown, hopefully the guys they have now will be able to be productive for this offense. But you're right. They haven't had those NFL receivers as of late. I mean, there was a stretch there. Clemson was putting receivers in the NFL every single season, right? And that's a massive thing to do. Like they put out wide receivers. They were wide receiver U for a very long time. They have not been wide receiver U as of late. And you're right. That has hurt them. A lot to talk about the quarterback. Obviously, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback. But the wide receivers haven't been the same. They've been good. They've had some good guys, but they have not been the same. All right, coming up next, I want to go back to my very first segment of the show, 3 o'clock. I gave my 2024 Panthers predictions. I'll give you not only what I had the Panthers doing in 2024, but best case versus worst case scenario for the Carolina Panthers in 2024, plus your thoughts and an announcement on tomorrow's show, a big show coming your way tomorrow. Stay tuned for hour number 4. We started the show today with my official 2024 Carolina Panthers predictions. I know that at 6 o'clock, we have a completely different audience than we have at 3 o'clock. So I want to revisit those predictions. And I also want to give you what I think will be best case versus worst case. I know the Carolina Panthers, it already seems like the worst case is happening, right? It seems like we are living in worst case scenario. You come off a season with 2 wins. I mean, how much worse can it get? How much worse could it possibly be? Appreciate you being a Tolo. That stands for Turn It On, Leave It On. That's what we ask you to do each and every day, 3 to 7, right here on the Fan Upstate. Couple of programming notes for you. Tomorrow, I will be out on location at Local Q. I hope that you can join me there. I'll be there from 3 to 7. Hope that you can come out, hang out with us. Diesel will be back next week. He's on vacation this week. Local Q, it is, let me get the address for you, 30 Orchard Park Drive in Greenville. Great food. I mean, you talk about the chicken wings. We talked about the district employee earlier in the show who stole $1 million worth of chicken wings. Local Q's the place for chicken wings. Let me tell you that. So I'll be there tomorrow, 3 to 7. If you're hanging out, get off work, looking for something to do tomorrow night after you get off, come hang out with me at Local Q. Also, Furman Fan Fest this Saturday. Dan Scott was on the show earlier today in the 4 o'clock hour. Gates open for the Furman Fan Fest at 12 o'clock noon, and the event's free. Furman will get a little scrimmage in, autograph session. It's a great event to take your kids to. Last year, they had a live band, some really cool giveaways and things like that. So if you're looking for something to do this Saturday, go out, check out the Furman Paladins in action, just 17 days away from Furman Paladin football, which you can hear right here on the Fan Upstate each and every weekend with Dan Scott as the play-by-play voice. Furman opens in Oxford, Mississippi at Ole Miss. Talk about getting your feet wet to open the season. Woo, that's going to be tough. And then Saturday also a new show. Well, not a new show to you, but a seasonal show, rather. The Saturday Scramble, season number 6. Can you believe that? A lot of you Tolos listen in each and every Saturday. Basically, the Saturday Scramble, if you're new to the area and have not checked it out, it's a high school football show. 2 hours dedicated just to high school football. We'll preview the games that happened we'll react to the games that happened the night before, and then we'll preview the upcoming week. We'll talk to coaches. This Friday, it's more jamborees, more scrimmages. So we will look ahead to week 0. We will be live at Ingalls every Saturday, a different Ingalls. This week we are at Ingalls in Spartanburg on the west side. It's Warren Abernathy Highway. Head football coach of the Dorman Cavaliers and several players will join us on the Saturday Scramble live and in person. So hope you can check that out as well. So a few programming notes. What do they call them? Rules, just some quick house rules, some rules to get you caught up on what's going on the station. So now that I've done my duties on that, let's get back into it. As I told you, in the very first segment of the show, I gave you my Carolina Panthers predictions. If you would like, if you're a Panthers fan especially, I want to know from you, what do you have the Panthers going in 2024? In the very first segment, the text line was feverish. A lot of texters texting in, giving their predictions on the 2024 Carolina Panthers. I will just rip the Band-Aid off and tell you what I have the Panthers doing in 2024. Then I'll explain where the wins and losses come. They won 2 games last year. This year, I have the Panthers winning 5 games. That would mean they lose 12 games. Is that okay with you if you're a Panthers fan here in the upstate in Spartanburg, Greenville, Anderson, wherever you're listening? 5 wins. That's 3 more than you had last year. I know it's not a lot, but you have to improve in small increments, right? And small increments for Dave Canales and company are going to be expected. They're not going to be given a long leash to turn this thing around in the next 10 years. They've got to start winning games, right? The front office also has to do their job, and I think they had a better offseason than they had a year ago. But I have the Carolina Panthers 3-7 at the bye. Now, at the bye, they better get ready because the schedule really picks up. Here's the first 10 games for Carolina. They open the season at New Orleans. I have a loss there. Then they host the Chargers. I have another loss there. So I have the Panthers starting the season 0-2. Go on the road to the Raiders. I do have the Panthers getting their first win of the season on the road at Las Vegas. Coming back home to host the Bengals, the Panthers here begin a 3-game skid. A loss to the Bengals, a loss to the Bears. Yeah, I said that. A loss to the Bears. That's right. Caleb Williams, I think Chicago is going to be better. And then a loss to the Falcons. Then they go on the road and get their second win, in my opinion, at Washington. They stay on the road, go to Denver. I don't think they win both of those. I have them losing at Denver. Now, if you told me they lost to Washington but beat Denver, I'd be okay with that. I just don't think they're going to win both, but I also don't think they're going to lose both in that 2-game road stretch. Then they come back to Charlotte for 2 games. They host the Saints, and they host the Giants. Same thing there. I think they get one of 2. If you tell me they beat the Saints, that's fine. I have them beating the Saints and losing to the Giants. I could very well see them beating the Giants and losing to the Saints. Splitting, still 1 win, 1 loss. But that would still equal a 3-7 record at the bye for the Panthers. So 3-7 at the bye. And then you have Kansas City, Tampa Bay, at Philadelphia, host Dallas, host Arizona, at Tampa Bay, and they're at Atlanta. I don't see many wins there, but I see 2 in those last 7 games. Kansas City at home. That's an L. That's a fat L. You're not beating Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter where that game is played. That's an L. Tampa Bay at home, I think, is a win for the Carolina Panthers. I really do. Carolina, while they struggled last year at times, I think you will see more bright spots this year. And that's what ultimately, that's what you're looking for, right? Obviously, the wins, you want them, but you're looking for bright spots that can turn into more and more wins. And I think you'll see them. I think the Tampa Bay game late in the season will be a bright spot. Then you go to the Link at Philadelphia. That's a loss. You're not winning there. You turn around and host the Cowboys, back-to-back NFC East opponents. That's a loss. I think it'll be closer than people think against Dallas. I don't expect Dallas to be very good this year, but I think that will be a loss. Arizona, I'm going to give them a win, and then I think they lose the last 2 of the season at Tampa Bay and at Atlanta. So those are my predictions for the Panthers in 2024. Tell me if you agree or disagree with those and what your prediction is for the Panthers this season. On the text line, we had a really good conversation about this earlier. We had about 20 total texts just in this one segment. Joey said that as a Panthers fan, 30 years as a Panthers fan to be exact, he said, I have no hope in Dave Canales and Bryce Young this season. Maybe next year, 5 wins this year. Well, I have them at 5 wins as well. And I want to touch on that. I understand that for the Carolina Panthers fan base, it does feel like the lowest of lows. And to be quite frank, it probably is. It probably is a low that most Panther fans have never experienced. I get that. However, you do want to believe that you're trending in the right direction. Turnarounds in the NFL, especially from 2 wins, doesn't happen overnight. Remember that. They don't happen overnight. What's fascinating is the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion, have a quarterback who showed a lot of promise in college, but has not shown much promise at all in the NFL. Now, at the very end of last year, he played good. He had stretches during the latter part of the season where he looked like a very good quarterback. I don't know, though. I've said this before on this show. I don't know that it's fair to put a lot of stock into what we saw last year with Bryce Young. I'll tell you why. Trevor Lawrence, his first year in Jacksonville, under clown Urban Meyer, terrible year. Jacksonville wasn't good. Trevor Lawrence wasn't good. People questioned if he was ready for the NFL. But what happened? Urban Meyer got canned, rightfully so. They went out and got Doug Peterson, a real NFL head coach, and they looked better. The next year, they looked very good. The next year, they started off really well and then had a bad skid. Had a really bad skid this past season. Trevor entering his 4th season, Bryce entering his 2nd. The difference is there's still unknowns with Dave Canales compared to Doug Peterson, who had played in and won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. Dave Canales, there's still doubters out there. The jury is still out, if you want to put it that way. He's a good coordinator, but is he going to be a good coach? It doesn't always translate. People do talk highly of Dave Canales, and a lot of people who know football and have coached in the NFL said this was a very good hire. So we'll see. But the difference is Trevor's coach had played for a Super Bowl and won it. Now, to bridge the gap between Bryce and Trevor, last year with Bryce Young in the offense and the system with Frank Wright, who I thought when he got announced as the hire, I thought was a horrendous hire. I almost think you have to treat that the same. I almost think that you have to look at it and dismiss what you saw from Bryce Young in year 1. The caveat is, the flip side of that coin is, if Bryce Young in year 2 doesn't show improvement in this Dave Canales offense, then that point will become moot. M-O-O-T, right? The reason I say that is because if Bryce shows this year much improvement, I think you'll be able to get everybody on board with the fact that you dismiss year 1 of Bryce Young and Frank Wright. Year 2, okay. It's almost like this is year 1 for Bryce. It is year 1 in this new system. It is year 1 in this new offense. And we heard just how good Dave Canales and Baker Mayfield were for each other. We heard just how much Dave Canales did for Baker Mayfield in 2023 and in 2022. We saw improvement, right? With our eyes, we saw we saw Baker Mayfield last year look much better. He was a really good quarterback for Tampa Bay. They were competitive. The offense was good. It was different than that year after Brady left where they couldn't move the ball. So my point is, to put a bow on that conversation, if Bryce Young comes out this year with much improvement, I don't mean in terms of wins, but I mean his physical improvement as a quarterback, then yes, I believe we can put year 1 to the side and not necessarily count that against Bryce Young. If he doesn't, as I said, then you won't be able to. I'm fascinated by it, though. Texter from the 451 chimes in on the text line, which you can do anytime, 71307. Texter says, if Bryce is the quarterback all year, 4 wins. If Andy Dalton gets in there, it's going to be 6 wins, maybe 7. Wow. Texter. So what you're saying is you trust Andy Dalton more than Bryce Young. You think Andy Dalton's a better quarterback than Bryce Young. That's a tough conversation. Andy Dalton last year, when Bryce Young was out, Andy Dalton didn't play bad. Or was that preseason? I'm sorry, I said when Bryce Young was out. It may have been preseason. A lot of people last year said Andy Dalton should have started over Bryce Young anyways, right? Again, though, how much did that matter in the Frank Wright offense? Texter, I'll say this, 451. Number one, I appreciate you listening to Wire to Wire, being a Tolo. Number two, I want to disagree with you. I really, really want to disagree with you, but I can't fully disagree with you. Keyword fully disagree. Andy Dalton had flashes, right? He was a good quarterback in Cincinnati. Wasn't a great quarterback by any stretch, but he was a good quarterback. Do we believe, though, that Andy Dalton playing this year is what's good for Bryce Young? Because if we say Bryce needs reps, Bryce needs reps, Bryce needs reps, we can't in the same breath say play Andy Dalton. Yes, the goal of the franchise is to win. There's no questioning that. The goal of the franchise is to win games. And if Andy Dalton gets you 1 to 2, maybe 3 more wins, that's great. But what does that do for you long term? It does nothing for you long term. Andy Dalton's 36 years old, right? Bryce Young is 23 years old. There's a 13 age difference, a 13-year gap, if you will, between the two players. Andy Dalton's not the future of this franchise, and he's not the future of any franchise. So I understand that Panthers fans want to talk about Andy Dalton, giving him a better chance to win, but you also have to look at it big picture. What does Andy Dalton do for you big picture? Does he help Bryce grow as a quarterback? No. Does he help Bryce mature as a player and as a person? No. Does Bryce Young gain anything from watching Andy Dalton play? In my opinion, no. Now, there have been a lot of quarterbacks who have paid their dues and sat and paid their time, if you will, behind the starter. Jordan Love did it in Green Bay. Worked out good. Replaced Aaron Rodgers. Last year, he looked really good. Everybody in Green Bay said, "What are you doing drafting Jordan Love?" They were very upset. They were pissed that the Packers drafted the quarterback from where? Who? Jordan Love. Well, what Jordan Love do? He made you eat your words on a silver platter. That's what Bryce Young is hoping to do, and I think with Dave Canales, he has a better shot at it than if he was still with Frank Wright, who, again, terrible, terrible hire. But the moral of the story is, the bottom line is, you're not going to see a drastic increase in wins this season. You're just not. You might see 2 more. You might see 3 more. I don't think you'll see 4 more. I don't think the Panthers win 6 games this year. So when you look at it at the end of the season, you'll say, oh, well, they only won 5 games. Not good, right? Nobody wants to go 5-12. And that's what I have the Panthers going in 2024. However, as I said before, it doesn't happen overnight. Dave Canales, it does take a little bit of time. But you want to see flashes of improvement. You want to see things that you can build on. You want to have moments that you can use for Bryce and the rest of the offense to build on. Because if they're healthy, I think this offense will show improvements. Is it a great offense? No. Is it a lethal offense? No. But if Xavier Legette's healthy and the connection that has been talked about a lot this preseason with Deontay Johnson and Bryce Young is there, and you get a healthy Jonathan Brooks, which I don't know if that'll happen or not, a healthy running back position group, a stable of healthy running backs, so I mean there. It's not a terrible offense. It's not terrible. You upgraded an offensive line, and especially if Xavier Legette has a big year, it's not going to be bad. You'll be able to win some games. You'll be competitive, and that's what it takes. Last year, newsflash, as bad as the Panthers were, they were competitive in a lot of games. Some of those losses, not all of them, some of those losses were very close losses. Now, they took their licks. They definitely took their licks, but I'll give you a great example. Open the season, 24-10 loss to Atlanta. The next week, they lost to the Saints by 3. Seattle the next week, 10. I don't consider that a blowout. That's a 2-possession game. Minnesota the next week, I was at that game. 1-touchdown game. Now, Detroit did beat them, and I mean beat them good, 42-24. But you look at that. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of the Carolina Panthers last year, there was only one game that wasn't close. Detroit and Miami got the best of you. Back-to-back weeks. Almost the same score, 42-24 to Detroit and 42-21 to Miami. But then Indianapolis, not a bad loss, 27-13. A 3-point loss to Chicago. Dallas got you pretty good, 33-10. A 7-point loss to the Titans. Tampa Bay, you lost 21-18. Close there. Green Bay, Jordan Love, best game of the year for the Panthers. You lost by 3, 33-30. And then Tampa Bay, you lost 9-0. You got blown out by Jacksonville, Dallas, Miami, and Detroit. So you had 4 games that you just didn't show up for, right? You had 4 games that you just got blown out by your opponent. Your opponent blew the doors off in 4 games. I know they didn't have a lot of offense to talk about, but again, some of them were close. Fat Pate says they never scored 30 points. I think they had 4 games without a touchdown. They might have. Again, they weren't good, but a lot of those, they weren't bad. They were close. And they did score 30 points, Fat Pate, against Green Bay. 33-30 was the final toward the end of the season. So, to your point, they did go a long stretch without scoring any touchdowns. But I can count 5, 6 games that were lost in a very, very close fashion. Very close fashion. Wesley Roberts chimes in on the Facebook stream and says, you're not winning a Super Bowl or even conference with Andy Dalton. So might as well stick with Bryce Young, who has the higher ceiling. And if you win less than you would have with Dalton, you earned better draft stock. True. I said the same thing, Wesley. Appreciate you chiming in. Said the same thing a few moments ago. They are 13 years apart in age. There's nothing that benefits you big picture-wise when you start Andy Dalton. There's nothing that makes sense about that. If there's one game you're trying to win, if it's one game, maybe. But you're not trying to win one game. All right, Dan Scott of the Furman Paladins. He's the voice of the Furman Paladins. They start their season in 17 days from today. He joined us earlier in the show. We'll have that interview for you next, right here on the Fan Upstate.
I can come up with some pie pans and whipped cream
There we go.
that you know, for a certain charity or something along those lines, maybe we could make something happen.
I
You
like
know,
that.
kind of on the sly outside of the official flag of Furman University.
Right on the side. We won't tell anybody. Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, joining us on Wire to Wire. Dan, this college football season, from the national perspective, is the most anticipated ever because of the expanded playoff. Do you feel that at the FCS level? How excited are you to kick this thing off?
Well, I'm just, you know, we're glad everybody else is getting to the party that the FCS has been at for a long time.
That's right.
Because it's as close as you're going to get to truly crowning a champion on the field. And you know, they're going to find out in a 12-team playoff what the FCS finds out in a 24-team playoff. The 13th and the 25th teams think that they should have been in, and there will be, you know, discussions about regional bias and conference bias and all of that stuff. But you're going to get an opportunity to kind of settle it on the field to a certain degree. And I'm happy to see it happen. I really am, because I think for all the kicking and screaming that the people who run big time college football have done over the past, you know, 2 or 3 decades and trying to keep this from happening, they're going to find out it's the best move they could have made.
That's a fascinating point. I'm glad you brought that up because, to your point, y'all have been doing it on the FCS level now for quite some time. So I think that's fascinating. I'm very interested in that. But on a serious note, Furman Fan Fest this Saturday, before we get into the schedule, it's a free event. There will be an autograph session for people to come out and get autographs from the team, and then a scrimmage, I believe, at 1 p.m. Is that right?
Actually, they've moved it back an hour, and we have a new promo that should be airing on your station now.
Good.
They're going to open the gates at 11, and everything's going to start at noon. So, just so for our fans who maybe haven't gotten that word yet, they've been putting it out on social media and everything else. But it's going to start at noon, yeah. But there will be some stuff in the end zone for the fans and kids, and there will be an autograph session afterwards. And you know how much of an actual scrimmage it'll end up being, I don't know, but it will be a practice. They'll be able to watch the team go through drills, and they will do some 11-on-11 stuff. Clay told me yesterday that he's about at the point now where they're going to dial back the actual tackling that they've been doing. He said they've tackled more in the spring and in the first 2 weeks of camp this fall than they had probably done in the last 3 or 4 years preseason combined. And he's at the point now where they're going to start dialing that back a little bit to make sure that their frontline guys are healthy. Still some position battles going on. So, you know, how much head thumping you're going to see Saturday, I don't know, but you're going to get a chance to see them go through some drills and see some athletes in action, and it'll be a fun day.
Dan, you've been calling Furman for quite some time now. Can you remember as big of an opening matchup for the Paladins as August 31st, Saturday night in Oxford against Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin, and the Rebels?
Well, as far as openers go, I'm trying to think. You know, we've opened at Clemson. Mm-hmm. We opened at South Carolina last year. We've opened at Michigan State since I've been here. We have played games at Florida, at LSU, at North Carolina State. So, you know, who judges? Right. Is opening at Ole Miss any bigger than opening at Clemson or South Carolina? Maybe, because it's a road trip in a place they've never been before. They've played Clemson multiple times. They've played South Carolina multiple times. So maybe from an anticipation standpoint, you know, the biggest thing is, as we know at this level, is schools Furman size need this game for their bottom line. And while and Clay said this to me yesterday, and it's really true, while it's the most important game on the schedule because it's next, it's really the least important game on the entire schedule from a Furman standpoint. But hey, look, it's going to be fun. We get the chance to go into those atmospheres and you know, a lot of folks that I'm associated with. This is the only time they've ever gotten to do it. I was blessed to cover Clemson as a writer and a broadcaster for 12 years. So I got to see Death Valley at its peak. And, if you're not careful, it can almost become routine. And that's why now entering my 14th year at Furman, these games that we get every year are pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to, hey, if nothing else, we get to spend some time on the Grove.
That's right.
That's all I hear from people. The Grove. You got to check out the Grove. People with tents that have chandeliers hanging from them for their tailgating.
Wow.
So, let's go check it out.
What a combination. Tents with chandeliers. Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, joining us right here on Wire to Wire. They opened the season in 17 days, 14 hours, 50 minutes, and 16 seconds and counting, thanks to the Furman website for that. Dan, would you describe Clay Hendricks and his tenure at Furman in any other way than stability? That's one word that comes to mind. Consistency is another one. But how would you describe his tenure at Furman?
I would. Stability would be a good word. I think another good word would be, or a phrase, maybe, striving for excellence. This program has a proud tradition that Clay was a part of. He has spent between being a player and a coach at Furman, both as an assistant and now as a head coach. This is his 39th year at Furman.
Wow.
And, he was 10 years gone to the Air Force Academy as an assistant coach. So he knows Furman tradition. And, I have to be real honest with you, as the college football landscape has changed over the years, even at the FCS level, I had my doubts as to whether a small private school like Furman that actually believes in academics, unlike a lot of the other schools that will play in and out of our conference, I had my doubts as to whether a school like Furman could really compete for an FCS national championship. Those doubts were erased 2 years ago when we made the playoff run to the second round, the first of the back-to-back 10-win seasons 2 years ago and last year, and then just solidified last year by going into overtime out at Montana in quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
This program is capable of doing it, and Clay Hendricks is the reason why. He has come back in and he has laid a groundwork. He's laid a foundation. He has provided stability, and he has the knack, he and his staff, for developing players. And while everybody around us, even in the Southern Conference, are raiding the transfer portal and doing what they can to build a team for a specific season, Clay still believes in building a program that is going to have sustained success by developing players. And, the COVID years, it skewed the roster, and that's why we had so many players with so much experience the past 2 years. I mean, we walked 41 seniors last year. This year, I think the number of freshmen and redshirt freshmen on the roster is something like 60. So, but those redshirt freshmen got an awful lot of experience, scout team and whatever, a year ago. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic this year, but stability, I think, is the best thing. And then the other word that you have to throw in there with him is integrity, because he always does everything the right way.
Dan, you had Tyler Huff at quarterback last season, a preseason second-team all-conference, a really good quarterback for the Paladins. What does the quarterback position look like in 2024?
Well, if you look at it just on the surface, you would say that the mantle is passed to Carson Jones, and it very well could be, because he's in his third year in the program. He's a redshirt sophomore. He started multiple games last year when Tyler was out, and comes out of that football factory in Tennessee that our former offensive coordinator George Quarles coached to so many championships for all those years. But I'm going to tell you, there's a freshman on campus right now named Trey Hedden who is pushing that position as hard as he can. And Trey had the advantage of being able to enroll early. So he was here for spring practice. So he is a full semester ahead, not only in the classroom, but in the football classroom, if you will, of all of the other true freshmen. And I've been out to practice and watched. This is a pretty good battle that is shaping up between these guys. And then there's even a third guy, and Newell Garcia, the redshirt freshman from La Miranda, California, who right now, the first 2 weeks has been those three. I think this week you're going to see it pared down to two, that they'll be getting most of the reps to get ready for the game. I believe it's going to be Jones and Hedden that will be the two that'll be battling it out. If you ask me right now who's going to be the starter, I would say Carson Jones. Clay hasn't told me that, but I'll be surprised if in the 4 non-conference games we have at the beginning of the season, if we don't see both of those guys play and see who steps up and has the best success leading the team heading into the conference season.
Dan Scott, play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, on the line with us, talking a little local Furman football, just 17 days away now from kicking things off in Oxford. The FCS AFCA coaches poll, Dan, has Furman starting the season at number 9, 10-3 a year ago. What does this national ranking in your mind mean, if anything?
It goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago. It means that Furman has reestablished its respect on the national level under Clay Hendricks. They're number 12th in the Stats Perform poll, the other major poll in the preseason, the media poll. And when Clay got here, he said that he wanted to get Furman back to being a perennial top 10 team. So getting that kind of respect, even after losing 40 players off of last year's roster, tells you what people think about the job that Clay's doing. And on one hand, the polls, they're not overly important from one standpoint, because for Furman, you win the conference, you're going to get the automatic bid. The polls help you though, and you see this even at the big boy level. The higher you start, the more room you have in case you have a stumble. In other words, if you start at 4, 5, or 9 and you have a stumble early in the season, you're not going to tumble out of sight. But if you're starting at 18 or 20 and you have that early season stumble, you're going to rocket out of the poll, and it's going to be hard for you to climb your way back in. So, there is a little bit of
10, and 5.
Well, we will see if the Braves can put 2 wins on paper back to back. They haven't done that in a while, have they? I mean, do the Braves even know that it's possible to win 2 games in a row? I don't know that they do. They might have forgotten. They might need to be told by someone tonight as Charlie Morton gets to start in San Francisco. Boy, aren't we all as Braves fans excited about that? AARP Morton getting the start for the Bravos, 9:45. I heard a Braves fan earlier say, yeah, I think we might can go on a run when Michael Harris comes back in a few days. Nah. I'm good. I think this team's already dead. And the Phillies aren't going to lose this week. They play the Marlins. You play the Giants. You'll probably lose tonight. The Braves don't win back-to-back. So we'll see. I'm just, it's bad to say this as a Braves fan, but you're just kind of waiting on the season to come to an end. Ready for 2025. That's tough, but it is what it is. Also, quick note, Hellman's Mayo announced on Tuesday, this morning, the release of Will Levis's number 8 Parfum de Mayonnaise. What is that? Not perfume, parfum. I don't even know what parfum is. I didn't know parfum was a real word. So Will Levis, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Will Levis, the former Kentucky quarterback, now with the Tennessee Titans, he had this stick. He was real big on the old mayonnaise, and specifically, he liked to put the mayonnaise in his coffee, right? I love mayonnaise. People call me weird on this show. I've said many times I like mayonnaise on corn on the cob. It's really good. I don't put it in my coffee, but I like mayonnaise. So now, because Will Levis is Mr. Mayonnaise, he's gotten a little bit richer today. Hellman's Mayo, which isn't as good as Duke's, everybody knows that. Hellman's Mayo has come out with a mayonnaise-scented perfume. No, I'm not kidding. I'm being 110% serious. A mayonnaise-scented perfume. Parfum de mayonnaise. How amazing does that sound? First of all, I didn't even realize mayonnaise had a strong smell to it. Like right now, stop what you're doing. Think, what does mayonnaise smell like? I can't even think about what it smells like right now. Can you? I'm sure it has a scent. I'm sure it has a smell, but I cannot think of what it smells like. Hellman's or Duke's. So I cannot say truthfully that I'm running to the shelves to buy Will Levis's number 8 Parfum de Mayonnaise. How about you? Let us know. Wire to Wire, Tuesday edition, coming to an end. Tomorrow. Guess what tomorrow is? It's a big day. It's a really big day. Not only because we're going to be at Local Q in Greenville, live, on location. I encourage you to come out and hang out with me. Tomorrow is show 100. Can you believe that? 100 shows of Wire to Wire. It seems like just yesterday we started this new program. And, man, here we are. 100 days later, 100 shows rather, not days, because we only are on air during the week. But 100 shows later, 400 hours of local radio. Show 100 is tomorrow. We'll see you then. I'm Cole Bryson, and this is The Fan Upstate. Stream. See y'all. See you tomorrow.